Please take a seat. Before we start the meeting, could I ask all present to please treat everyone in this chamber with respect. If members wish to remove the jacket, they may do so. Hurry up, Councillor Hussain. All right. May I remind members and members of the public that the meeting will be streamed live on a webcast from the Council's website. Council has a commitment to conduct its full Council business in an environment that's welcoming, secure, and safe for members, employees, and visitors. It's important that meetings are conducted in a safe and fair manner. All persons present at meeting should be treated with courtesy and respect. This includes members of the public, elected members, employees, and visitors. Behaviors, language, or actions that impact public safety, cause disruption, or adjournment to the course of business at meeting are not acceptable. Members of the public are asked, therefore, to note the public meeting protocol, which is also available on the Council website, and elected members are reminded to note that elected member protocol and of the members' code of conduct, which provides details of expected principle of the behavior. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Ibrahim, Williamson, Councillor Birch, and Councillor Kenya. Minutes. Is Council agreed that Council minutes from the meeting held on 6th of September 2023 are approved?
Agreed.
Declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest from the members in respect of matters to be determined by the Council at this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. On the motion in regards to the HMOs, Article 14. So I'll be leaving the chamber when that's discussed.
Personal interest on item 12, motion 2.
Councillor Hamilton?
Same. Oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
Which one it is? Apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same as Councillor Harkness. Personal non-prejudicial on item 12, motion 2.
Just to make it clear as regards interests, now, it's not personal prejudicial, it's either a disclosable pecuniary or another registrable interest if it relates to a body upon which you've been appointed by the council, or it's a non-registrable interest.
No, I rent off a housing association.
What did he say?
Councillor Glasson?
Personal and pecuniary in motion 2.
Councillor Bishop? Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, same as Louis. Councillor Hamlet.
Councillor Akhtar?
Pecuniary interest in item 12, motion 1, as an employee of a housing association.
Thank you. Urgent business. Colleagues, I would like to notify you of a matter which I'm sure you all are aware of, international conflict. Today I'm using my role as a first citizen of Oldham to give voice to the concerns of local people about the humanitarian impact of the ongoing conflict in Palestine and Israel. It's just over the last 3 weeks, more than 8,000 innocent lives have been lost, more than half of those casualties being women and children. As fellow human beings, our hearts ache for the suffering of those who were victims of horrendous attacks in Israel on October 7th, young people murdered, families killed, and taken hostage. And equally, our hearts ache for the thousands of innocent Palestinians who are caught up in the conflict they have not caused. We are sitting while buildings full of civilians are bombed, while neighborhoods are displaced, and while whole families are wiped out in an instant. We cannot, as fellow human beings, sit by while thousands of innocent children continue to be killed. We cannot turn a blind eye to the deaths of innocents in the name of war. This is not a Muslim, just be clear, this is not a Muslim issue or Jewish issue, it's a humanitarian issue. Just this week, the heavily populated Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza was the target of an Israeli airstrike, killing hundreds of civilians while targeting Hamas. Israeli human rights organization, among many other organizations called B'Tselem, has condemned the human impact of this strike and wider conflict, and I quote saying, "The criminal harm of civilians is intolerable, and the obvious needs to be stated again and again. Not everything is allowed in war. It is the time that in solidarity with our fellow humans and in the spirit of peace, we call for a ceasefire. Tomorrow, I will be writing to Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, the most experienced senior politician in the country, to express my concerns about the impact of this conflict and to ask him to use his considerable influence to work towards peace, to ensure humanitarian aid and access for aid workers, and to request a ceasefire to safeguard the lives of the innocent now." The letter will be available in my parlor from lunchtime tomorrow, and I would welcome any member of this chamber who wants to countersign this letter. If they can't physically get here, the letter will be circulated by email, and you can confirm your signature by email, and we will add your name to the letter. And this is the letter, again, to wish to support this humanitarian plea. May I request members now to have 1 minute of silence for all the victims of war. Please stand if you are able to. Thank you. I'm mindful that we have very packed agenda, but I think it's very important humanitarian issue. So I'm offering if the group leaders want to say anything. Councillor Shah first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do ask myself what kind of world we've created where advocating for the safety of children and other innocents has become an issue to be debated. An issue that is contentious because it absolutely isn't. It should be incredibly simple because all human life is precious. Mr. Mayor, the Prime Minister, during a panel discussion with Benjamin Netanyahu on his recent visit to Israel, said, "We want you to win." I reject this sentiment, not because I don't recognise or appreciate the impact of the horrendous attacks of October the 7th, because there are no winners in war. Instead, there are people who lose. They lose their children, they lose their families, they lose their homes, and they lose their safety. Every single day, hundreds of innocent Palestinians are losing their lives. Their homes are being bombed, the hospitals they so desperately need are being targeted. Even refugee camps, as you mentioned, are not safe. The international community needs to be working towards a ceasefire. They must work towards access to adequate humanitarian aid. They must work towards a peaceful solution to this conflict and for the release of the hostages and for the long-term safety and security of Palestinians and Israelis alike. And to the community in Oldham, as a leader, we must not allow anyone to use this issue to stoke tensions between communities. We must reject the implication, Mr. Mayor, that comes directly from the Conservative Home Office Minister, Suella Braverman, that to march for peace To march in solidarity with one's fellow humans is a criminal act or is somehow hateful. We have undoubtedly seen an increase in both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic sentiment, online and elsewhere. As a borough, we must come together and we must reject this, to call it out wherever and whenever we see it. As humans, we cannot help but be moved, be saddened by the human impact of this conflict. The images of horror we are seeing naturally draw feelings of fear, of anger, of helplessness, and overwhelmingly of sadness. At the most fundamental level, any of those people could be us, it could be our children, it could be our family, and it could be our friends. That shared humanity, that compassion and that empathy is why conflicts that are geographically so far away feel so close to home. It is why debate, discussions and protests on our streets are so emotive and so passionate. While it is entirely natural and right to fight for the rights, safety and protection of our fellow human beings, we must also extend that compassion to understand the fear, the hurt and the sadness of others and to make space to hear each other with respect. Let Oldham, Mr. Mayor, be that place where we open up these conversations on the basis of our shared humanity with the hope that what is achieved is peace. In the short term, so that we're able to, that the impact of innocent people now is minimised, and so that in the long term, Palestinians and Israelis feel safe, feel secure, and have their rights respected and preserved. I welcome this act of humanitarian solidarity from our Mayor. Our thoughts and our prayers are with all those that are impacted by this ongoing conflict. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon, would you like to use this opportunity?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think it's appropriate that we make this a political issue tonight, and I'm rather saddened that it seems that way. What I would like to say is that I fully support the actions of the Mayor and ask all members of each group, if they so feel, to do so, to sign the letter to the Prime Minister, which is supporting peace and a ceasefire. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Sykes, would you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an occasion when some of us need to say less rather than more. This is a tragedy. We all know it's a tragedy and it needs to be stopped. And if I could take the words of one of my old school masters, people need to be taken outside, have their heads banged together and get on with talking to each other and not throwing rocks and other much more serious things at each other. And as usual with all wars, it's the most vulnerable, the children, who will suffer. So I'm happy to support anything that will stop what's going on without attaching any blame. And I also think when it begins to play out in our borough in terms of the massive rise we've had in hate crimes, we need some more resources and we need to call that out as well, because some of us could remember the last time we were here in 2000 and 2001, and we need to make sure we learn those lessons and deal with that. I understand people's temperaments and this is a very emotive issue, but it never ever solves anything, whereas talking does. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sykes. Councillor Hopin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that your statement and the humanitarian side of the matter is definitely something that we can support. I think the language that's being used from people on this is causing division, and I think we all need to be careful of what we say. Listening to the leader of the council, I think it might have been a little bit too much one way. I think we need to make sure that we are staying central and thinking of both sides in this thing. But yes, I do support your letter, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hopin. Councillor Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo your sentiments and fully appreciate the words you've expressed. There are no real winners in conflicts like this, and there are those who are amongst us who will use this for political gain. Indeed, politics is the root cause of most evils in the world, in my view, and I'd just ask everyone within the borough to take a step back and choose peace and not sides.
Thank Thank you very much. Can I offer you my sincere thank you to all the group leaders and members for your instilling my faith in humanity and coming together. And from my point of view, it is about preserving a human life than anything else. Thank you. Communication relating to business of the Council. I would like to inform you members of the passing of Dave McCreely, who was awarded the Civic Appreciation Award in 2015. Our thoughts are with his family, and I will, on the behalf of the Council and all members, will write to the family as well. Thank you. Item 6, petitions. There are no petitions for this meeting of the Council to consider. Item 7, Leaders' Annual Statement. Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Leaders' Annual Statement is traditionally an opportunity to share the successes we've had as a borough throughout the 6 months since the start of the municipal year. But it's also an opportunity to reflect on our progress against the longer-term ambitions and strategies that we set out. To reflect on the last 6 months is to reflect on a list of promises that we've kept. I established my leadership and the work of this administration on absolute resident focus, on the needs of local people and on delivering for them and with them. We set out to be a council that fights for local people, a council that is on the side of residents, and one that actually listens. We have heard consistently from local people that they love and treasure their local areas. They hate it when those areas are disrespected or feel unloved, and they want streets and parks and green spaces that they can be proud of. Our Don't Trash Oldham programme is cleaning local grot spots, transforming streets and neighbourhoods, tracking down and prosecuting fly tippers, and working in and with communities across the borough to improve their local areas. Local people told us they value green space. That is one of the things that makes them the most proud of their areas. In response, we've begun the largest tree planting programme undertaken in generations, with thousands of new trees due to be planted in coming months across the borough, making our local areas more attractive and contributing to delivering cleaner air too. We're also making investments into much-loved local parks, including the reopening of a restored conservatory in Alexandra Park and a new play area for Daisy Nook Country Park. And we've launched a £500,000 scheme to fund more of the local projects that really matter to local people through our Local Improvement Fund. This money supports locally grown bids and projects developed between local councillors and residents to improve their area. It might be funding for a local club or charity, highways improvements or investment in parks, but we know that helping reward and reflect people's ambitions for their own neighbourhoods is really important. In May, the Department for Education approved plans for a new sixth form college here in Oldham, to be run by Eton and Star Academies. The college will offer a choice for students studying A-levels and will focus on supporting young people from a range of backgrounds into the best universities. As part of their plans, we will see a new town centre campus built. Eton will provide access to its online teaching and to other learning opportunities, as well as providing additional funding of around £2,000 per student, in addition to DFE funding. What an opportunity and what an option for our young people to choose should they wish to do so. In summer, we opened the first of 6 new family hubs at Beaver Children's Centre in St Mary's. The upgraded centre offers access to family health services, support groups and family events and activities all on one amazing site. The launch was such an amazing day, highlighting the real difference that services like these make to the everyday lives of local people. I met with those families whose children were born during COVID and they had missed out on really crucial chances to meet other parents, take part in other groups and seek support with health or parenting issues, and who were so excited by the opportunities the centres would offer them. For a generation in the 1990s and 2000s, Sure Start centres were a lifeline, and I know our new family hubs will reignite those opportunities for people across Oldham. And us keeping our promises and delivering for local people isn't all about new projects, openings and campaigns. It's also about doing what's right for local people and local services that are struggling. Recently, the council has to step in to ensure the safety and security of over 100 older people and vulnerable adults who were residents of Chadderton Total Care, a privately run care home. The home, facing unprecedented financial pressure due to inflation, was on the brink of closure, with 100 incredibly vulnerable local people, many with dementia and some at the end of their lives, who would have had to be transferred to other facilities, possibly because of the scarcity of care home places as far as Lancashire and Yorkshire. As a council, we stepped in, we purchased and we took over the delivery of services at that home, securing 200 jobs and the stability of care for those 100 people. This situation shows the fragility of the care sector, not just here in Oldham, but nationwide, and the pressures on local authorities who have to step in where the private sector fails for the good of local people. But it also shows the strength, the resilience and the ability of the public sector to put people first always. I've been saddened by the ongoing impact of the cost of living crisis in Oldham, and I've been heartened by the difference of our £3 million cost of living support package that has been made available to local people. Our helpline and engagement teams have supported thousands of residents to access support with energy bills, access to food in a crisis, money advice, and support via Welfare Rights or the Citizens Advice Bureau, or even emergency help to meet immediate needs like families without nappies or baby milk. And that need has undoubtedly changed. Staff in our services and the voluntary sector tell me we are seeing more people in need month after month, not because of some one-off crisis, but simply because they're incomings, and that's not just those on benefits, but people who work too. They're not enough and they're not meeting their basic housing, heating and food needs. In addition, we're seeing levels of housing debt, both rent and mortgages rising at alarming rates, with homelessness numbers and those in temporary accommodation increasing month on month. And for those in settled housing, we are also seeing challenges with housing standards, increasing issues of damp and mould, houses in poor states of repair. Living situations have a real impact, Mr. Mayor, on people's quality of life and on people's immediate health. These challenges are some of the biggest facing us as a town. As you will hear from the range of motions and housing issues before us on this agenda, and as a council, we can't just listen, we have to respond. That's why tonight I'm announcing a housing summit, which will bring together landlords, both private and social, the council housing and enforcement services, and charities and the voluntary sector organisations to develop a better plan for better housing standards. A plan that will tackle insecure housing and to reduce homelessness for Oldham's people. I'm confident that, as with the cost of living crisis, we can make a difference to these issues locally, as well as lobbying for national changes to support us. On this and many other issues facing local people, we are determined as a council to make the right decisions that will improve lives for long term, whether that's on education, whether it's on housing, whether it's on jobs, whether it's on health, or whether it's on regeneration. We've continued on the course we set through our Creating a Better Place programme of work, because developing a new purpose, a renewed future for the town centre is vital to the creation of jobs, vital for the attraction of new businesses and the support of the existing ones. As part of this, our recently agreed partnership with Muse, a company with an amazing track record led by born and bred Oldhamer and a massive ambassador for the town, Phil Mayle, will create 2,000 homes, essentially a brand new high-quality neighbourhood at the heart of Oldham Town Centre. These homes, alongside a new 6-acre urban park and improvements to cycling, walking and public transport routes, will breathe new life into Oldham, bringing new residents, new visitors and new businesses. The work on Spindles to transform it into a multi-use office, retail and leisure facility with increased footfall is well underway, with the new office space due to open early next year, including a brand new front door for the council and partner services at the heart of the town centre. The new home for Oldham's Market and a brand new event space, a replacement for the Queen Elizabeth Hall, is being constructed at the Parliament Square, or in Old Money, the town square side of Spindles, and is due to be completed in 2025. Market traders are excited for the move, with all current traders having expressed interest in pitches at the new site. The old library restoration into a new civic hub is well underway and due to complete during 2024. The new public building will feature meeting spaces which will be available to the public, as well as being used for the civic events and also other meetings. And in the meantime, we continue the delivery of our events programme across the town centre and beyond. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the first Oldham Half Marathon in 4 years. It brought together thousands and thousands of people from Oldham, from across Greater Manchester, and from elsewhere in the country to run what I am sure is one of the most challenging courses out there. But alongside those people were spectators and others enjoying our Halloween festivities and spending money in our local businesses. Similarly, our upcoming Christmas events, Festival Oldham, illuminating community-led events like Oldham Pride and the Whip Friday band contest bring new visitors every year to enjoy what Oldham has to offer. Those events and our ongoing work to promote Oldham are more vital now than they have ever been, because we know that while our regeneration work, and admittedly the inevitable disruption it causes has to happen, we also know that we need to offer something that keeps people coming back to Oldham, keeps people choosing to shop here and to spend their time here. And we know that this strategy is working. Our evaluations show that each event we put on brings in an economic benefit to local businesses that far exceeds the cost of putting them on. Putting our money where our mouth is and investing in this borough is essential in driving investment from businesses, both existing businesses to expand and new businesses to settle here in our borough. Building new homes is essential. It's essential to meet the growing need for quality local housing for the next generations of Oldham. Investing in this place that we love called home is the right thing to do. Establishing and driving a future vision for our town is the right thing to do. Creating the opportunity for high quality, well-paying jobs and supporting businesses to thrive in the long term is the right thing to do. But that doesn't mean it's always the easy thing to do. We know that while these works are completed, there's an element of disruption. We know that new housing isn't universally popular despite clear local need. We know that the proof has to be in the pudding in terms of real impact on local people, but we believe in what we have set out to achieve, and we are going to hold steady and achieve it for local people or future generations. As we are seeing in Westminster, the easiest thing for any leader and leading party, any administration to do is to be led by the most current viewpoint, by what is politically expedient and in the short term, and in doing so lose track of the overall vision. Whether it's cancelling HS2 or reneging on vital net zero promises, we have example after example of easy short-term decisions being made nationally, but we won't be doing that locally here in Oldham. I need to be clear that holding course and delivering our long-term vision for the borough doesn't mean we aren't listening to what local people are telling us. It's quite the opposite. We know that the investments we make need to be on things that will have an impact on Oldham, socially, culturally, and economically. And that means creating things in the people, and that means creating things that people want and will love and use and value for many years to come. A real-life example of this challenge is our plans for a new Coliseum Theatre. As we know, there were many, many people who were shocked and saddened when the Coliseum made the difficult decision to close their doors early this year, following a loss of council art funding. The continuation of the theatre in Oldham was a commitment I made when I became leader in May, and I will absolutely fight to deliver. As a council, we know how important arts and culture are to local people and to the future vision we have set for our town centre. So despite the challenges faced by Oldham Coliseum, we've held firm to our commitment to build the new theatre that the Coliseum Board have long needed and long requested. Plans for that new theatre were put out for planning consideration recently, and what has been fed into the planning process via petitions and letters and emails has been a real uprising of love for the original Fairbottom Street Theatre building. I know the opposition leader will be glad to hear that because he's expressed the same sentiment. Like in everything we do, we're committing to consider and discuss the concerns and desires raised by those who love the old theatre, to make sure they are addressed and to make sure that we take those people on the journey with us to deliver a new, more sustainable, exciting future for the Oldham Coliseum Theatre as a business. We're due to meet with the Coliseum Board in the next few weeks to take forward these discussions, and we hope to be able to share with you our joint response and jointly agreed plans for the future of performance in Oldham Town Centre. So watch this space for updates on that particular project, but also for the progress on the delivery of our wide-ranging long-term vision for a better borough, for updates on the continued delivery of our local services that make a real difference to local people's lives in both large and small ways every single day, and for updates on the amazing things that Oldham and the people who live here have to offer us. We as an administration will continue to focus on improving the lives of the people who live here and the people that we serve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Youth Council, there is no Youth Council business. Item 9, public questions. This part of the agenda is public question, where Council will consider all questions submitted in the order received. Once the time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right of reply to answers given. I will be reading out the question. If the time limit has expired and a member of the public has submitted the question, the response will be published on the Council's website. The first question has been submitted by Mick Harwood. What can be done to stop idiots vandalizing play areas in Oldham's parks? I call upon Councillor Chris Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Harwood, for your question. It is disappointing to see when we see incidents of vandalism and antisocial behaviour in our parks and green spaces. We always encourage residents that witness such incidents to report them to Greater Manchester Police through the non-emergency 101 number or the Greater Manchester Police web portal. This will hopefully allow Greater Manchester Police to identify the individuals responsible, and once those responsible have been identified, the Council can use civil powers to take action against the individuals, such as antisocial behaviour injunctions or criminal behaviour orders. Such injunctions and orders will prevent offenders from entering specific areas, and we would seek to prevent further behaviour by prohibiting offenders from entering the borough's parks where appropriate. When we have identified issues previously in parks, the Council have also asked the First Response Security Service to patrol locations to deter such incidents. In some cases where young people are found to be involved, our youth engagement team work with the young people to divert them into more positive activities if possible.
Thank you. The next question is from Conor Green. What is the Council doing to improve scent provision after the recent Ofsted and CQC inspection? I call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for Mr. Green for his question. A joint Ofsted and Care Quality Commission inspection on the planning and commissioning of services for children with special educational needs and disabilities of the Oldham Partnership took place in June 2023. The report highlighted some positive practice, but also 2 priority areas that required addressing urgently and some areas for development. In mainly the very long wait for the NHS health services that children must wait for, which the government has acknowledged as an issue throughout many towns in this country. To respond to this, the local partnership, including the council, the integrated care partnership, parents and carers and wider partners came together to co-produce a priority action plan, which details the actions that the local area will take to address the 2 priority actions identified by the inspection. The areas for development have been included in the existing Ascend and Inclusion Improvement Programme. The priority action plan forms part of this and will be published shortly, so the actions we are taking as a local area partnership are open and accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Meg Birchall. What services are on offer at Beaver Family Hub, and when will family hubs open across the rest of the borough? I call upon Councillor Shahid Mushtaq to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank Meg for the question. The Beaver Family Hub, as the leaders alluded to, was the first of 6 planned family hubs across the borough that will offer a wide range of support for families with young children. At each family hub, local families will be able to access a range of help and support to make sure their child is developing well, is healthy, safe and looked after. Services at Beaver currently include weekly baby play and stay and play sessions, weekly FAB activity sessions for children aged 5 to 11 years old, midwifery clinics for before and after the baby is born, health visitor contacts and development clinics such as baby weigh sessions, breastfeeding and weaning support groups. Families can also purchase Healthy Start vitamins, children's toothbrushes and toothpaste and feeder cups. We continue to develop new sessions and services, so would urge families to check our website or visit a family hub or children's centre for the most up-to-date information about the services and support available. Improvement and redecoration work is due to commence on the new family hub sites in the new year. The formal transition and launch of these sites as family hubs will be in late spring, early summer 2024. Work is also underway to develop family hub services at Oldham Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. The next question is from Dennis Leach. Would the leader of Oldham Council please confirm the number of knife crime incidents that have taken place in Oldham since January 2023 and detail what her council's strategy is to discourage our young people from being influenced by criminals who carry knives? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Ms Leach for her question, which I think she's mistakenly attributed to the Council leader because community safety sits in my portfolio. The Council recognises the significant impact and harm that knife and weapon-enabled crime has on communities and has implemented a number of measures to attempt to reduce such types of behaviour using a mixture of education, intervention and enforcement. This includes using research from the Greater Manchester Violence Reduction Unit, adapting recognised good practice from other areas and listening to residents to establish why they feel the need to carry a knife or other weapon. The responses have included sessions in schools, including presentations to young people and the commissioning of a play regarding knife crime and its effects. The Council have also funded commissioned, targeted works with individuals at risk of engaging in knife crime and focusing on messaging around how we are keeping residents safe so they do not feel the need to carry a knife or other weapon. We are also working closely with Greater Manchester Police to identify individuals involved in knife crime, supporting their criminal prosecutions where appropriate by using civil powers such as criminal behaviour orders. The Council have also past funded knife archers at the request of Greater Manchester Police, which were deployed in hotspot locations. With regards to knife crime incidents that have occurred in the borough, this information will be held by Greater Manchester Police, and I would suggest Ms Leach contacts the police directly.
Thank you. The next question is from Gary Talbot. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm the total net debt for Oldham Council is forecast for the year 2023-24 and that the total amount anticipated in interest payments to service this debt will be over the current financial year? I call upon Councillor Abdul Jabbar to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks to Mr Tarbuck for his latest question for the Council finances. The Council's debt forecasted is to be 160.996 million at the end of this financial year, and the forecast interest payment to service this debt is 6.5 million. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. The next question is from David Nestor. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm how many racially motivated crimes were recorded in schools in Oldham and provide a breakdown of these crimes as part of this? Can they provide a breakdown of victims and perpetrators by ethnicity? I call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I can thank Mr Nestor for his question as well. While the Council encourages schools to report any hate incident, there is no legal requirement for schools to report incidents to the Council, nor to report the breakdown of information you have specifically requested in your question. The total number of incidents that have been reported to Oldham Council for the academic year 2022 and 23, so the school year ending July this year, is 195. I welcome your concern about any hate incidents happening in schools, but would like to offer reassurance that where these issues occur, they are taken incredibly seriously by schools who use the local policies to tackle perpetrators and support victims. Alongside these schools throughout the borough do fantastic work in promoting respect and a culture of zero tolerance for racism and hate. During the last week before half term, I know many local schools were taking part in curated activities around Hate Crime Awareness Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Lane Kovacs. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm the total number of HMOs in Oldham and how many people are being accommodated in them in total? I call upon Councillor Elaine Taylor to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Ms Kovacs for her question. There are currently 72 properties that have been licensed as HMOs by Oldham Council. To be licensed as a HMO property, you must have to be licensed as a HMO property, the house must have 5 or more people or 2 or more households sharing facilities. There are also a number of smaller HMOs that do not require licensing, under the legislation. And as of August 2022, the Council's monitoring of HMOs identified 331 such properties in the borough. The above equates to just 0.34% of all residential dwellings in the borough of Oldham. This data does not specify the number of people accommodated in each property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Julie Haywood. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm how many secondary schools in Oldham have gender-neutral toilets? Can they also confirm if risk assessments were conducted to ensure the safety of girls in schools with gender-neutral toilets? I call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The provision of toilet facilities is a matter for individual schools, and the council does not hold this information. If, as a parent, Ms. Haywood has questions about provision at her children's school, these can be taken up with the school in question directly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Anita Love. On viewing the council meeting on 6 September and previous live meeting, it's obvious to observe some council member and also those of cabinet while sat in the council chamber using their mobile phones. They have their phones either on the desk in view or sit as through they appear to be asleep with their heads bowed and viewing the devices. The social media must be far more important to be looking at their phones than being interested in what is being spoken about in the chamber by their comrades. Observing councillors on their phone is happening far too often, and it appears as though they are not interested in the meeting, as all we see is head bowed. My question is, can all councillors and staff please refrain from using their social media devices while in the chamber, switch them off or out of sight? After all, they may learn something. I call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply.
Mr. Mayor, while I accept it may seem to an outside observer that those using their phones aren't paying attention, in reality the very opposite may be true. Councillors and council staff use their phones, tablets and other devices to access information, to read agendas and reports, and to gather information in response to queries raised during meetings. In fact, as you would be aware, we are actively discouraging our members from using printed copies of reports and agendas to save us money and time in printing. Far from being a distraction, mobile devices of all sorts are now an essential tool in many settings. Thank you.
Councillor Ali, I truly trust and have faith in your answer. Thank you. The next question is from Carl Fadian. I know Failsworth Town Hall is now offering a range of services to the community. When will other parts of the Oldham benefit from these community hubs? I call upon Councillor Peter Dean to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're moving forward with place-based working, which is all the services coming together in hubs, and Failsworth is our first such venture, and that is proving extremely successful because it actually moves services into local communities, and the residents are really appreciative of them being able to contact people locally and to hopefully get proper direct services that they appreciate. What we are going to do is roll out these services to the rest of the borough. That's actually being action presently, and it will be rolled out, and we hope that the completion of the rollout to the other 4 districts will be completed by spring of next year. And also there'll be particularly focused for people to get information and help from around 12 different locations, and that will feed into the district hubs, and hopefully people will realise that the services are improving, they're being delivered locally, and people will see significant benefits. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Can I thank you, public, for very precise questions, and relevant cabinet members for precise answers. We managed to get through loads of questions, which is very healthy and useful. Thank you. Item 10, reports of leader and cabinet members. At a group leaders meeting, it was proposed that the time limit in the council procedure rules be extended and varied for the meeting so that there are 10 minutes for questions for leader from the group leaders and 10 minutes for the section on her portfolio responsibilities. Does council agree to do this? Thank you. So I invite leader and for reform and regeneration portfolio.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's the group leaders' questions first.
Sorry, Councillor Sheldon. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was alarmed, as I'm sure many of our residents were, to hear Councillor Jabbar reveal at a recent cabinet meeting that there are around 10,000 cyber attacks on this council's systems every single day. That's very disturbing. All it would take is for one attack to succeed and our systems would effectively be out of our hands and this council would have to bear the cost. When Redcar and Cleveland Council was attacked in 2020, the council systems were down for nearly 3 weeks, costing the council £7 million and 1 month of disruption. Other councils face a similar barrage of cyber attacks, but that would be cold comfort when we are locked out of our systems, unable to access the data and services that can help ourselves and residents. With developments in artificial intelligence too, there is a real risk that these cyber attacks could be more detrimental and far more frequent. Will the Council ensure that the work being done at the AI Summit at Bletchley Park, organised by our government, is kept in mind when planning the Council's cybersecurity systems and policies? Can I ask the Council leader, do we know where these attacks are coming from, and what else is the Council doing to mitigate the risk of any of these attacks being successful? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah.
Why, thank you, Councillor Sheldon. I do accept that I am a very fully informed and knowledgeable leader, but unfortunately I don't have the answers to all those technical questions. But what I can do is definitely give you the reassurance. I don't know whether you saw my colleague on the left nudging me and trying to give me all the information on through my ear, but I did say to him that it's fine. I have a productive, effective working relationship with the leader of the opposition. I will provide him with all the information that you need and the reassurance, but I do believe that we will have these measures in place because we have read recently, this week as well, there was another council across the country that had faced a similar attack. So I do appreciate your concerns and your grateful to you for asking, making sure that I have a breadth of knowledge of everything that we do and certainly prepare myself for the next full council meeting, but I'll give you a written response and I hope that's okay with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon, do you want to ask a second question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's a bit more of a general question. A good education is vital for the development of young people. And part of that is ensuring that our young people are in the classroom as much as possible. Unfortunately, recent statistics highlight that this is not happening as much as we would like. Last year alone, there were over 9,000 persistent absentees in Oldham, meaning they missed more than 10% of sessions and over 700 pupils who missed over 50% of sessions. In total, Oldham's total number of unauthorised absences rose to a staggering figure of more than 570,000, the highest in Greater Manchester. The rate of unauthorised absence has been on the rise for several years too. That is a significant loss in learning for those pupils and a concerning trend for our borough. Will the leader of the council join me in reminding students and their guardians, parents, of the importance of attendance at school and to raise this issue with the schools to see what more can be done to stop this worrying trend in truancy? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Schools work really, really hard to increase school attendance, and we support them with that work. And non-attendance is also sometimes a concern from a safeguarding perspective as well. So it is a real concern from a social care perspective too. But definitely, I will join you in raising concerns around that and see what more we can do collectively. Thank you.
That was a very easy question. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is about places for everyone. Residents and other stakeholders have the opportunity to share views on Labour's latest version of the plan to build on Greenbelt until the 6th of December, and I would encourage them to do so. Despite what we've heard from Labour leaders before, and despite what no doubt we'll hear again tonight, the Places for Everyone strategy will do nothing to tackle the housing crisis which the leader spoke so eloquently about earlier. Expensive luxury housing on our Greenbelt, palaces for everyone, is not the answer for families and our young people struggling to get onto the housing ladder. The latest round of modifications that have gone out for consultation make a damning read. Virtually every commitment on infrastructure development and community building has either been watered down or abandoned. Labour are asking people in Oldham to surrender our Greenbelt space in return for no new investment in roads, no proportionate contribution to new healthcare services and no new school places. Liberal Democrats have consistently called for a brownfield first approach to housing development. It's a challenge. I make no bones about that. It requires hard work to get the right developments on our ex-industrial heritage buildings and to achieve the right mix of housing types. We need more social rents as well as more starter homes. So I want to hear the leader's answer tonight. If, after the next round of local elections, if one of the 9 councils were to remove itself from Places for Everyone, will that be curtains for this unwanted and misguided plan?
Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Councillor Sykes. It is a plan for future housing development to build thousands of new houses, so it is part of the solution, but it is absolutely right. I do agree with Councillor Sykes, it's not everything, but we know affordability is an issue. We do have a brownfield first policy. We do need a plan, otherwise developers would build wherever they wanted without any acknowledgement and with no controls that we'd have. And if we did pull out of the Place for Everyone, it wouldn't go through anyway, so it would make no sense to do that at all. Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question.
Thank you. Councillor Hoban.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I don't wish to, well, I don't wish to jump on the bandwagon of the major parties with trying to do away with people driving the cars. I'm sure that most councillors do have issues with their residents and parking, and I just wondered whether the council could do anything with regards to that, and more enforcement, especially around our schools, where the safety of our children should be more important than where a parent parks a car.
Thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hoban, for your question, and I think it's a really, really fitting question as well. Dense parking is an issue throughout Oldham. I don't know what the answer is because you see more and more people travelling for work. You see like more than one car per household, which isn't helpful either. But we do have enforcement safety cars that do travel around school opening and closing times, and we have safer school streets as well. And we're trialling them across some of them schemes across the borough to eliminate some of that. But absolutely a fantastic question. More does need to be done. Essentially, we just need to be we need people to be more responsible. And I think your concerns are valid, and we do need to address the parking issue. But I just don't see how we can do it when so many people have so many cars in one household now. We should encourage, for health purposes, walking and cycling where you can, and a great deal of infrastructure is being put in place in the next few years to make sure that that is made easier for people. And, you know, so absolutely agree with what Councillor Hoban's question was. More does need to be done, and we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Residents rightly expect the council to both give them a voice and implement available due process when it comes to changes which impact on their environment and community. At the moment, HMOs, as highlighted before, with 6 bedrooms or less, do not need to go through the planning application process, meaning any house on any street can be converted without any consideration or consultation to those it may negatively affect. Aspects as basic as parking are not even given consideration. As the leader knows, just as they have done in other Labour-run councils, such as Salford and Bolton, the council can resolve this by an Article 4 direction, removing permitted development rights, meaning such developments has to go through the planning application process. My question on behalf of the residents of not just Shaw and Crompton, but the borough is, will the leader do the right thing and seek to implement Article 4 direction across the borough as per the Conservative amendment to our independent motion? Thank you.
Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Councillor Hinds, for your question. Well, these things do take time, I have to say. I do agree with elements of what Councillor Hinds has raised, but some of that change needs to change national planning policy as well. We have lobbied the MPs in the past and they're aware of the concerns in this area, and we're raising it continuously. We are already looking into Article 4, but we need to meet the criteria, which is not really easy to meet. The threshold is extremely, extremely high. It's not as simple as just implementing it overnight. These things do take time. We are correlating evidence to see whether we can meet that threshold, but obviously it will take some time, but I will keep Councillor Hinds updated.
Thank you very much. Now move to the next section, which is I invite the cabinet members to present their report, maximum of 4 minutes on the report and 6 minutes of non-executive members' questions. My apology, I understand some questions were submitted in advance. I don't have the list. So I'll invite Councillor Shah first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So portfolio briefings have obviously changed, and we're bringing them here in the form of reports to give greater visibility of the progress and performance of key services and major projects across the organisation. Each portfolio will provide a 2-page overview of key activity every meeting, and members will have the opportunity to ask any questions they may have, portfolio by portfolio. I will provide an update for the reform and regeneration portfolio, but we'll also take any questions that members might have on minutes of Greater Manchester Combined Authority held in July and the minutes of the AGMA Executive from June. As you heard, Mr. Mayor, from my annual report, there is an absolute need to drive forward our agreed long-term vision for the economic future for our borough, our plan for jobs, for regeneration and for skills. And this update shows the pace of progress on our key regeneration schemes. The work to redevelop and breathe new life into the Spindle Shopping Centre continues at pace. Council staff will be moving into the new office space from early next year, which will mean that more than 1,000 additional people per day will be using the local retail offer, which will be literally on their doorstep. From the feedback that we've had already, we know that the people and businesses in the town centre are really looking forward to that. The very visible work to build a new market hall also continues at pace and is on track to be opened in early 2025, and we have begun detailed conversations with our amazing current market traders about the arrangements for that move. I met with them myself to discuss the plans, and I'm happy to report that all traders are currently planning on moving over to the new space and are excited about these plans. That doesn't mean they aren't apprehensive about the move, but we are working hard with them to involve them as much as possible in how we manage that process to transfer. That includes regular discussion sessions and lots of support from the markets team and our exceptional staff here. Also, summarising the report was a very welcome but unexpected news that we have been allocated £20 million of funding over the next 10 years to help drive forward projects and work for the people of Chadderton. We're still working through the exact stipulations around this money, but the government have been clear that it will require a local board to decide and drive through residents' priorities, something that will really support the work we are already doing to strengthen relationships and partnerships with local people in our districts. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to mention that the Local Government Association are with us this week carrying out a corporate pay challenge, and I think a few of them are sat over there in the corner. These are held in every council every 4 years to help us assess where we are as an organisation and identify areas of challenge and support. They also identify areas of best practice and that can be shared across the sector. The team, made up of councillors and officers from around the country, are with us for 4 days, and their report should be published by the end of the year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to welcome this sort of rejig of this bit of the agenda. Hopefully it will provide elected members with a lot more information, and hopefully we'll be able to hold the executive better to account. My question is very brief, and I did give notice of it. Can the leader provide a progress report and update on the Spindles, Town Square and Old Library regeneration projects? And is the council on track to meet its targets, both in terms of timescale and in particular budgets? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question, and I really do appreciate the advance written notice. I am pleased to report that key town centre regeneration projects, including Spindles, the Old Library and the Town Square, that fall within the Creating a Better Place programme, currently remain on track in respect of programme and approved budgets. Staff are moving into the Spindles office space early next year. We should be moving into the Old Library later that year, and the market and event space will be open early 2025. These projects are already well on their way to delivery and completion. These are huge and incredibly complex projects, so we can never, ever absolutely guarantee that there won't be future delays or any budget increases. But I can tell you, Councillor Sykes, that the team work incredibly hard and incredibly diligent in reducing that risk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before I come to you, Councillor Bashford, just want to make sure that man opposition had opportunity. Do you have any questions? No. Councillor Bashford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Aruj on your report, page 28. It's just been picked up by Peter. I think I might know the answer. The Shaw Lifelong Learning Centre, place-based integrations, now up and running. So when Royton Town reopens, that will be Royton's integrated place. What's going to happen to the Shaw, and will that stay for Shaw? Thank you.
So the report mentions the place-based integration site at the Shaw because of the refurbishment of Royton Town Hall. Does this mean that it will, whether it would stay open once the town hall is closed? So within that North District, the teams will be using some flexible back office space for non-public facing activities at the Shaw Lifelong Learning Centre, also known as the Shaw Community Centre, on an interim basis, whilst we deliver the investment into the town hall. But the Shaw Lifelong Learning Centre also continues to be used to deliver a series of public-facing activities to residents and community groups. There's no current plans to close that centre, although options will need to be considered as a part of any asset rationalisation exercise across the whole estate. But I do see the significance and the importance of that currently. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Quaid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my understanding that the site known as Hartshead View in Fitton Hill was an agreed sale price of £8.3 million in 2020, of which 57% of the site was owned by Oldham Council and 43% by a housing association. However, in March 2023, it was agreed that the site was sold at £5 million, and as such, £2.5 million was awarded to the council. Therefore, what caused the write-down of nearly £2.4 million to occur, and why, and going forward, what other warranties and guarantees are in place in terms of fines as a result of claims against the council? It's my understanding that a nearly £400,000 claim was placed against the council, which means that taxpayers have had to foot the bill. Therefore, is the council selling our assets off cheaply, and going forward, what other scrutiny will be taken forward to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Sure.
I'd like to thank Councillor Quigg for his question, but unfortunately I don't have the details of every land sale, but I will get that information to him.
Thank you. Councillor Hamblin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in regards to creating a better place to the leader. Our coat of arms motto translates to dare to be wise. May I ask the leader responsible if they felt it was wise to remove the award-winning flower garden event space, and also the WOW Garden, a year before any development was due to take place, and in hindsight to consult and work with the resident-focused way and ask people of Oldham their feelings on the garden. Thank you.
Councillor
Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Hamlet for his question, and I'd like to also say that I did make reference to this in my annual statement as well, that sometimes when you're trying to do things long term, there's short-term disruption or sometimes inconvenience or sometimes upset, and some things require, well, everything requires public understanding, but that doesn't mean that we can always respond in that way. We have to do what's right. We didn't unnecessarily remove it a year before. We had to prepare and continue with them preparations in order to do the long-term planning stuff. But I don't know whether Councillor Louis Hamlet was in the town centre on this past weekend, but actually that site was used for the Halloween activities, and there will be planting throughout the town centre. We will always ensure that it stays green. That's part of our plans, and there will be a new 6-acre new park that people have really welcomed, and actually the resentment and the sort of like disappointment that Councillor Hamlet has had from the raising of that flower bed hasn't been fed back in the way that has just been mentioned.
Apologies, Councillor Surgeon, we run out of the time, but feel free to email your question to Councillor Shah. Deputy Leader and Housing and Licensing Portfolio. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy actually just to remove the report as it is. I think it's fairly straightforward. Obviously, housing and homelessness is a hot topic tonight. There will be a number of motions coming forward. I think the only thing that I would probably add by way of an update, because that just came through today, that the DLUC visit, which is a deep dive into the use of temporary accommodation, has been scheduled to take place on the 19th of December. So just wanted to make members aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm trying my best to make sure that questions are politically balanced. I got 2 colleagues from the Labour side and 1 from this side, 2 this side. So I'll start with Councillor Harkness.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there are currently 52 houses listed on Greater Manchester, on Oldham's HMO register. Out of those 52 HMOs, 7 currently have expired licences, some of which ran out more than half a year ago. An initial request for information of these expired licences was not responded to for over a month. A request for information on how many of those HMOs have been inspected and found to be safe has not been responded to, but instead was referred to freedom of information. As representatives of the people living in that accommodation, we should not have to rely on freedom of information requests to find out whether buildings that this council is responsible for licensing are safe and well run. Can the Cabinet member please give any more information on these HMOs and confirm that they have been found to be safe? That they are being run in a manner that should meet with the licence requirements, and can they explain how we came to be in a position where so many HMOs do not have a current licence?
Thank you, Councillor Harkness. Councillor
Taylor. Thank you to Councillor Harkness for his question. Thank you also for submitting it in advance, because an FOI isn't something that I would automatically be made aware of had he not brought this to my attention. I understand that the FOI response to the councillor has now been completed, and I do share your concerns regarding the importance of licensing of all HMOs on a timely basis and ensuring that they are suitable for occupation. I can confirm that licensing of HMOs is an ongoing process, and all properties are subject to routine inspections to ensure they meet housing standards. Additional inspections are also undertaken where concerns are raised and compliance is ensured. Given the nature of the nationally introduced licensing framework, there is often a lag between a licence expiring and a new licence being processed. Throughout this period, we continue to ensure compliance of such properties so they remain safe and suitable. I do take on board, though, there was some issues in terms of getting back in a timely fashion, and that's something that we are aware of and we will be mindful of in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain next. Junaid Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for your portfolio information. Can you tell me of the houses that are being built in, or the new houses being built in Fitton Hill, how many of those are going to be affordable? And how can the residents who need affordable homes access them? Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you to Councillor Hussain for this very important question. Again, I did get some prior notification because obviously there were some specifics in this question that I might not be aware of otherwise. So the development on Fitton Hill by Countryside Properties will deliver 365 much needed new homes on a brownfield site. The homes are a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties, and 81 of them will be affordable homes. Planning policy requirements require that 10% of new homes are affordable, so this development will deliver far above that quota. Of the 81 affordable homes being built, 49 will be available for affordable rent, allocated to households on the Council's housing register. 32 will be available for shared ownership via plum file homes, offering the opportunity for home ownership for people who would otherwise struggle to afford it. I mean, I just want to supplement this question a little bit really by saying that, you know, the country is in the midst of a housing crisis. Again, that will be referenced, I think, when we get to the motion section. And, you know, I know and we know that even sometimes so-called affordable homes are becoming anything but, as we see mortgage rates rise and the impact of inflation and the ongoing cost of living crisis. But, you know, across the borough, we are seeing growing levels of housing debt, both amongst renters and those with mortgages, and we are also seeing increasing numbers of people facing homelessness and in need of temporary accommodation. We are also seeing more and more local residents seeking social housing that we are not in a position to currently provide. I think something needs to be done nationally to drastically increase the number of affordable and social homes being built across the country, but we will continue to be a voice for local people on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just referring back to the shortage of housing and the crisis that we're all very familiar with, how many immigrants has the borough agreed to take and house this year, and of them, how many are illegal with no ID? Because I get many questions being asked of, you know, who these people are, and it's a security issue, and services are strained, as we all know, and it's showing a rise in HMOs, and the local people have genuine concerns that their quality of life is declining, even down to parking, as Councillor Hoban referred to, on streets, because houses are overfilled, they're overcrowded. People, you know, mums and fathers with prams are walking into roads because they can't walk on pavements comfortably. It's causing no ends of issues. So we just want to know, that's not all down to immigrants, I understand that, but there's a separate issue there with no ID as well that I'm getting questions about.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you for the question. I mean, obviously, some of the specifics that have been asked for, I don't have that to hand. If you want, you know, that kind of detailed information, it's obviously probably good to give advance notification, so I can get that for you.
I've had that question on council for the past 3 months. We've always been timed out,
so
I've got round to it.
That's okay. So I can get some of that information for you. I mean, maybe we'd have a different viewpoint on this, but I think, you know, I would like to think that Oldham is a welcoming place for people who need to come here. People who need housing. People who need housing need housing. We don't decide who comes into this country. I don't make, you know, I don't have a view on why people need to be in this country. But the reality of it is that I think, again, the perception and the reality are two very, very different things. What I can say is that the numbers of refugees who present as homeless in the borough is very small. It is less than 5%. Now, and most of those have been made homeless.
That contributes to the lack of housing that's available.
And most of those have been made homeless because they've had to leave their accommodation because the Home Office has told them that they have to. So, you know, I think this is a very complex matter, and I feel quite sad that this has been dressed up as a question in this way. Actually, you know, I can't really comment in terms of your view on this. And of course, you know, there are lots of issues in terms of why there is a shortage of housing stock. But I think to try and suggest that that falls with a particular community or a particular group of people is just, it's irresponsible. It creates division. It creates problems that we don't want. And I think it's misrepresentation of the facts. I think as elected members, we have a responsibility to be clear with people and to present the facts as they are.
Yeah, move extension. Agreed.
There's no extension in this section. Sorry,
Okay,
you're out of
okay,
time. Apologies.
thank you. I'll leave it
Apologies,
there then.
Councillor Charter, you couldn't get your question in, so. I'll invite Deputy Leader and Children and Young People's Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similarly, I don't think I'm going to say too much. There were... I know, yeah.
Can I have a silence, please?
So there were a couple of things I wanted to touch on. One already has been mentioned, and it was in the public questions, and that was about the new family hub, the Beaver Centre. And I was at the opening, like others in the room. Fantastic facility, and it's doing lots to help and support our families and young people. So like I said, that's come up. But the other thing I wanted to mention actually was the adolescent support unit, which I visited last week, and the impact that's having. So in the report it talks about 85% success, and I think the importance of that, because I did speak to a young person, and as I was leaving, his dad turned up to pick him up, and the impact that's had. I mean, you can't really put it into words, because this young person came in, he's built a relationship with the staff in there, and that consequently has had a massive improvement on his relationship with his dad. He'd come to pick him up and take him out, but just the feel of it was just fantastic. So I want to highlight that, because that does create a lot of releases a lot of pressure on services, because it's a preventative work that is really, really powerful, impactful, and working really well, like the report highlights. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Gloucester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please provide an update regarding the progress made towards a new children's care home announced in December last year? When can residents expect a facility that is open for use? Thank you.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Thank you, Councillor Gloucester, and thanks for providing me with the question beforehand. So, as you mentioned, opening a new children's home in Oldham is an important commitment from this council to provide local care placements for Oldham children in care. This will provide a good quality local home for our children in care. A number of potential sites have already been identified through joint work by Children's Services and our corporate estates team. We hope to confirm the location of this home in the near future and to commence recruitment of staff to provide care at the home. Current plans are for the new children's home to be open during the 24-25 financial year. Can I just add on to that? So when I visited the adolescent support unit last week, I also visited our residential homes and spoke to some young people and the staff, and saw the facilities themselves and the atmosphere, the environment, because whilst we're talking about a new home, what we're not talking about is the impact that's having. And when you walk in and you sit down, there was a team meeting in one of the homes, and it feels like your living room, basically, and the level of comfort that the young person felt. When they were interacting with the staff, it was like you were interacting with your mum, or like you were interacting with your dad. There was banter, they were having a laugh, and one poor young person was having to make all the brews and toast for whoever wanted them. So that element to it isn't reflected in the question, clearly, because it is about the physical asset. But I just want to highlight the fantastic work that the staff in these residential homes do and the way they do it. It's not a 9 to 5 for them. They genuinely do feel like the young person is a member of their family. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thanks for the question.
Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been advised that Oldham has 556 children in care. Is it possible to confirm whether, for better or worse, this is a situation, how this situation compares with our neighbouring authorities? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren, for the question, and again, thanks for the heads up so I could get some numbers. So we are not an outlier in relation to the number of children looked after. Our rate of children looked after is at 89.1%, 89.1 per 10,000, 0 to 17 population, is below the statistical neighbours, which is 96 per 10,000, and the North West region average of 97.1, but above the England average of 70 in Q1 of 23-24, which has remained year-on-year trend. And again, just to add on to this, I'm not always a fan of comparing to neighbours depending on what it is we're talking about, but I think it is important that we understand what's happening, because sometimes there can be disruption or patterns that are not aligned, so it is important that we have this. So thanks for that, and thanks again for the heads up. Thank you.
Councillor Holly Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mushtaq, for your portfolio update. I am concerned about the decision to only open one family hub in each district. This will leave several children's centres in the boroughs not being utilised. Does the council have a plan for these centres, or are they going to be closed to cut costs? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's an important question, and I think it gives me an opportunity to talk about the services that were provided, and the leader spoke about the Shore Start centres in her annual statement and the impact those Shore Start centres had. I am getting round to visiting all of the children's centres with my deputy, Councillor Josh Charters, and to go and visit, you understand why and how some of them are not being used the way they could be being used, why it's things like accessibility, IT, but we have spoken at length about the Beaver Centre and the impact that's having. It puts all the services into one place, and again, I've often talked about integrated service and place-based, not just being about different services being in the same place, because that's not necessarily integrated working. That's you all being in the same place, literally. But in this instance, it is focused on everyone focusing on the family, ensuring that whatever services that family, young people need to get to a better place, that is happening. With regard to cost cutting, there will be no decision without consultation. That's a legal requirement on the children's centres. But as I think has been mentioned in the leader's statement, there will be another 5 family hubs with satellite centres. And just finally, I think it's important that we don't focus solely on one family hub in each district, because it's about ensuring there's lots of good work going on through the voluntary sector, schools, community groups. So it's ensuring.
Thank you, Councillor Mushtaq. Business, Employment and Enterprise Portfolio, Councillor Hussain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I move the report? Can I move the report as printed, please? And if there's any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Any questions? Councillor Gopur.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Can I just ask about the business awards? Is this, Councillor Hussain, is this a labour... Sorry? Oh, education. Sorry, apology. I thought it was business. Sorry.
No, you're right.
I'm sorry, I thought it was. Yeah. It should be education, but it's not. All right, okay. No, it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. I got a bit scared there. You went to education instead of business. So can I ask, these business awards, is it actually a Labour event or is it a council-wide, Oldham-wide event? And if it's the latter, can you please let us know why the rest of the members were not afforded an invite to this business awards? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised at the question, actually, Councillor Gafoor. It is a business award. It's not a council award whatsoever. So I don't know where you're getting that. Are you getting mixed up?
I'm just saying that nobody else from any of the other parties, unless I'm completely mistaken, were invited to the business awards.
Nobody. I wasn't there personally either. So
I'm sure there was a lot of Labour members there.
May I suggest that you guys have a debate outside probably and can clarify roles and responsibilities, who does and invites to the business awards? Councillor Harkness.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With the council again missing its targets of spending 55% of its money locally, can the Cabinet member please give some confidence that it will commit to bringing real change in the way it procures goods and services in favour of local suppliers? The truth is that even the 55% target is not enough of a stretch. So to be missing that is poor. The social value portal is a good start, but the officer's explanation is that the target has been missed because of some accounting irregularities. This just isn't good enough. Real change to the fortunes of Oldhamers can only come in our council spends. It's spending millions locally rather than seeking accounting fixes that tick an already unambiguous box.
Councillor Sen.
Yeah, I think again, Councillor Harkness, this does fall under Abdul Jabbar's portfolio. It's procurement.
Yeah.
So we will ask again, you can reply in writing. Any more questions for Councillor Sen? Sorry, yes, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What was the feedback given from the market traders on Tommyfield Market in respect to the new market in the Spindles? And thanks for your report as well, by the way.
Councillor Sen.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Davis, for your question. I think leaders already answered my question to this. I don't know whether you heard it or not, but I'm happy to respond to it. Yes, we went to the markets along with the leader and our competent officers who were so grateful, and we were welcomed, and the traders welcomed and up to date, and we did share with them the information. So mainly it was on the leasing strategy, rental values, application process, and the key milestone, and a high level of overview design. So hopefully we continue the ongoing meetings with them monthly. And if there's any other further updates, I'll be happy to provide them on a 6-weekly basis.
Thank you very much. No other questions. I will move on to education and skills portfolio. Councillor Ali, apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have detailed some of the key activities and progress in the education and skills area. In addition, I'd just like to cover a few points. First of all, we are extremely ambitious for Oldham. Our aspirations are to produce the best educational outcomes so that children and young people reach their full potential. In Oldham, 91% of our primary schools have been judged to be good or outstanding, which is in line or possibly above the national average. We are closing the gaps in attainments across our borough and between Oldham and the rest of the UK. Our key stage outcomes for 2023 show that Oldham school standards are recovering from the negative impact of the pandemic and in primary and in secondary. Most gaps to national averages are narrowing, and benchmark performance shows improvement. Outcome for disadvantaged pupils continues to be a strength and an improvement. GCSE's results have seen significant improvement when compared to 2019 results when exams were taken. The Council's role in school improvement has changed considerably in recent years. There are increasing number of academies and free schools directly funded and overseen by the government department, the Department of Education. The local authority role has become increasingly strategic, and increasingly schools are expected to take responsibility for their own improvement and help other schools that are struggling. We lead a system with schools and academies to identify priorities for improvement. Locally, we have established an effective local school improvement system and set up a board called the Oldham Learning Board by bringing together schools and academies to create the school-to-school support with leadership from key system leaders with a compelling vision for the school improvement system. In relation to school planning, the administration has over the years expanded good and outstanding schools and supported the opening of the Brian Clark Academy. This has now meant there are currently sufficiently places in both primary and secondary schools. I have detailed on the report the 1 to 3 parental preferences rate, and which you would see certainly in secondary is in line with the national average, and in primary just slightly below. In relation to children with special educational needs and disability, known as SEND, we recognise that as soon as a parent has any concerns in relation to a child, they would want to quickly have the child assessed by specialists to identify the needs and support the need to enjoy the childhood. They would want the right support services for the child to produce the best educational outcomes, and in time the child to be prepared for adulthood and into apprenticeships and employment. We are focused on delivering that ambition of every parent and every child. We are now focused on building specialist provision in some of our mainstream schools so that more of our children can attend a mainstream setting and have that additional resource provision to provide that specialist support. This will mean more of our children can attend schools within their own locality rather than having to attend specialist schools. This is a sizable project with 20 schools that have expressed an interest, and I know our residents will be proud once we have delivered on this ambition. In Oldham, the findings from the recent inspection report from the Ofsted and Care Quality Commission across the partnership, Council Health Services highlighted that it is working well and what needs to be done to protect the vulnerable group. Progress against these actions areas will be overseen by an enhanced partnership governance arrangements. In terms of the attendance and inclusion, improved attendance.
Have to cut you off. Thank you, though, for a comprehensive report. I want to make sure that members have opportunity to ask questions. Councillor Woodbine? Sorry, Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Many hundreds of children from our borough receive an outstanding education through independent schools, be that outside of Oldham or at our own Hume Grammar, which boasts a long local history. Contrary to common misconceptions, a significant proportion of these students are from poorer backgrounds and are awarded fee assistance or even full bursaries. If successful at the next general election, the Labour Party is planning to implement VAT on independent school fees. This punitive policy will not raise a great deal for the Treasury, attacks aspirational families, and will risk the closure of many independent schools, placing further demand on the state sector and completely undermining the existing partnership working between independent and state schools. So can I please ask the Cabinet Member whether he values the education delivered by independent schools, and if so, will he share my objection to this Labour policy with his national party? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you to the Councillor for question. I mean, all I could say is that the Labour Party is very ambitious on improving schools. I mean, at this moment, the government directives on school improvement, unfortunately, is very, very patchy and blurred. Labour Party is extremely ambitious to improve education for all, and when in government, the school improvement, when in government, will introduce a new regional school improvement coordinated by civil servants and drawing up on the expertise of local leaders, and that will encourage peer-to-peer support and share best experience. And this, along with tens of other initiatives, such as the free breakfast clubs in all primary school, we will see a real improvement in educational outcomes in Oldham and in the UK.
Thank you. Councillor Sajid Hussain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the performance of our lifelong learning service in line with regional and national average? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saj, for your question. We are really proud that Oldham Council operates a lifelong service where our residents can access several training centres scattered around the town, offering learning opportunities for our residents. It is our absolute aim to ensure that our residents have the skills which allows them to get good jobs both now and in the future. When Ofsted did an inspection of that service, they were extremely commendable of the quality of the education, the curriculum and the teaching assessment. In terms of your specific question, we haven't had any national achievement rate data for the past 3 years due to the COVID, and no assessment was done. The interim national assessment rate with the final will be available at the end of March 2024. But I can tell you this, historically, we have always been above national average and have no concerns that this has changed. And I'm confident that when the data becomes available, we will be in line or above the national average. Thank you.
Councillor Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following concerns that are raised about the lack of social, emotional and mental health support at Saddler School, I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member for Education whether all secondary schools in Oldham have this in place, and if not, what steps are we taking to ensure that those schools still under local authority control are meeting the needs of those young people, including the provision of a safe space for them to seek refuge and emotionally regulate? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop, for your question. Thank you for the the notice in advance. So I've gone away and I was able to have a look at that. So all schools have a responsibility to support children and young people's social, emotional, and mental health. This will use a range of strategies to identify children and young people at risk of poor emotional and mental health and put these in place for groups and individuals. Oldham's Educational Psychology Service promotes and supports the emotionally based school avoidance initiative, which supports children and young people to attend school effectively. This works by supporting schools to pick up on potential issues and put preventative strategies in place. When schools have exhausted what they can do to support children and young people, the local authority can then commission a range of services to support them, including commissioning alternative provision. Our recent inspection report has highlighted that the inspectors have commended how well the children with social, emotional and mental health needs are benefiting from a range of interventions in Oldham. Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the Cabinet Member if he would expand on the absence figures, because the absence figures in any school, whether it's secondary or primary, do affect the overall standing of the school, and certainly when it comes to Ofsted. Now, as far as I can see, and maybe you will explain to me, Councillor Ali, why the onus seems to be mostly on the school itself to get its pupils into school. It's one of these dilemmas that does affect a lot of schools, and this is not just absences for holidays and things like this. This is where children refuse to come to school, or come to school and then only come one day in a month. And I know it does happen, and it affects school figures, and it has a great adverse reflection on the schools, and I don't know how the authority itself could do more. Thank you.
Councillor Ali, you have to be very quick with the answer.
Thank you for Councillor Byrne for a question. I mean, I agree. I mean, school attendance has a huge effect on children's learning, their social lives and achievement. As we strive to improve educational standards, we know the persistent absence can undermine all of these things. We are working with all schools and academies in Oldham every week to monitor their attendance, and this is helping us to target the work of our attendance and family help teams. So schools and families can receive the support they need to ensure the children are being educated. In addition to this, we analyse the data we receive to better understand why some people are absent more than others, to better target our support to schools and families where it is needed. I mean, all I can say is there's a range of interventions that we do in terms of trying to improve attendance at schools. And if Councillor Byrne wants, I can supply some of the things that we are doing, a range of initiatives that we are doing, Councillor Byrne, and I can forward that to you by email. Thank you very much. Thank you. Just conscious of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Neighbourhood portfolio, Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move this report as read. I just wanted to bring to some points in the report under community safety. The 90 sanctuary surveys. If members are not aware what sanctuary surveys are, they are surveys on properties to ensure that victims of domestic abuse are safe to remain in their home rather than having to relocate to other places. And the investment in parks, as Aruj has made out earlier on, along with the Daisy Nook and Woodhouses Park, residents have got an 85% satisfaction rate in parks. Winter maintenance is on track. Preparations are in place for our winter, and work is progressing within the town centre on the Linear Park. If I could take any questions.
If I could request to colleagues to keep questions as questions, not observations, so we can answer more questions, will be helpful. So I'll start with Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member share with the Borough who is really in charge of the neighbourhoods portfolio? Is it the Labour Cabinet member, or is it the Executive Director for Place Economic Growth, who said the policy for grit bin placement was under review at the same time as the Cabinet member was busy defending the same policy? Or is it the Labour leader who instructed the Executive Director for Place and Economic Growth to review the policy in the first place? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy, for your question. Yes, I can tell you. It's me as portfolio lead, it's Emma Barton as Executive Director of Place, and it's Aruj as leader of the Council. On all matters, we work collectively, and if you had a look, then all of the portfolio leads do the same. The original grit bin review was proposed in 2022, and since sharing the findings of the review, we've taken on board the concerns raised and stated by the Executive Director, and supported by myself and the leader. A review was undertaken by further engaging with elected members, and I'm pleased to state that this review is now being concluded and preparations for winter maintenance, including grit bins, are close to completion.
Councillor Islam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my question is short. How many trees have been cut down because of ash dieback? Do they get replaced? If they do get replaced, do these count towards our planting targets? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the question. Ash dieback is a really serious problem that we have across the country as well as in the borough. So far we've lost around 1,500 trees. That doesn't include the trees for 23-24 year, but I estimate that will be another 400. We are planting a tree to replace each one that needs to be taken down. And yes, they are included in our numbers, so we're not making as much progress across the borough as increasing the number of trees because of ash dieback affecting the replacement of trees. But once we progress with that further, then the number of trees across the borough will increase significantly.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. Just following on again about trees, but more specific in my ward. We have streets such as Yates, Mayfield and Stoneleigh in Durker and Jowett Street in Watershed Inns, where there are a high amount of trees planted in the pavements and verges. And over time, these trees have considerably grown and are causing real concern to residents living in the surrounding properties at the thought that they could collapse during a storm, which we are seeing this week. Whilst we all agree that it is very important to protect trees, the council has previously confirmed that these trees were planted incorrectly. St James residents and I would be grateful if a review of the trees could be looked into as a priority, with removal, if necessary, being an option, before a catastrophic accident happens and the blame placed on Oldham Council. Thank you.
I can answer that quite succinctly. If there are any health and safety risks with trees, then they will be assessed and they will be removed.
Thank you. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, how is the council working with partner organisations to tackle antisocial behaviour and crime? With the reduction in PCSO and police, how can residents feel safe in their communities after reporting a crime or an antisocial behaviour? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So Oldham Council works closely with Greater Manchester Police and other partners such as housing providers. Our Community Safety Service utilise antisocial behaviour orders, criminal behaviour orders and closure orders, etc. to complement the actions by Greater Manchester Police. They also issue warning letters to young people who may be involved in ASB as a preventative measure, and the Council has also funded a number of projects to support people to prevent them from engaging in antisocial behaviour and criminal activity.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbin.
Thank you, Madam. Said Madam Mayor, sorry.
You will be making me
I'll
coffee
throw it in
very
the
soon.
bucket. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a short question going back onto trees, because you seem to be a specialist on trees now, Councillor Goodwin. I just wondered, the trees that were all cut back under Mr. Burnham's failed CAS scheme that cost us millions, have they been replaced or will they be replaced, or can we ask the Mayor for some money to put some more trees in their place?
The answer is, I don't know, but I can ask the question.
Thank you for precise answer. Quickly, Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many of you will be aware of, obviously, the motions being presented about IX Wireless. However, we've had representations from residents that in a prior meeting to that, IX Wireless had agreed to only put up 3 poles on Denbydale. They've now reneged on that post the agreement and now put up 7 poles. As a result, people are now concerned about the fact that are they going to start reneging on other agreements that have been agreed before approval of these applications.
Councillor Goodwin.
I'm sorry, that's not my portfolio, Mr. Mayor. That's the portfolio for Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor, would you mind just giving a response in writing? Sorry, not now.
No.
Oh, yeah, okay, in that case, yeah.
Health and Social Care portfolio, Councillor Barbara Brownidge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only update I have on the report you've had is that thanks to fantastic cross-GM work, we have now sourced enough treatments for the scabies outbreak. The first treatment has been applied. The second treatment will be applied in the next week. So hopefully we'll see the back of it. So any other questions, I'm happy to try and answer.
I have Councillor Hamlet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and well done sorting out our scabies epidemic. So well done, Barbara, and well done to our adult social care team. It's nice to see so many senior executive members, by the way. There must be a peer review team, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question, can the Cabinet member confirm how much was the total amount paid for the acquisition of Total Care, and will the Cabinet member be able to confirm if Total Care will be amalgamated under MyoCare? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I don't understand that. We're always here at Council, but there we go.
Sorry, I meant senior officers.
Ah, that's not what you said. Right, so we paid £2.4 million to acquire Chadderton Total Care. The reason we made that decision was because it has a significant number of nursing beds and they are in very short supply across the region. If we'd failed to act, those residents who are in Total Care would have had to have been relocated almost certainly outside the borough, and we estimate that the cost of that would have been in excess of £5 million. More important than that, of course, is the impact that would have had on those residents, which we would have thought was completely unacceptable. So we're confident we did the right thing. At the moment, we are looking at options on how that home will be run going forward. So at this point, no decisions have been made about any possible amalgamation with Maya Care. That will obviously be under review, and we will report back once we have a final decision.
Councillor Nashin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report talks about the Oldham Tobacco Alliance and the work that's been done to reduce the health inequalities caused by smoking and tobacco. Can you give an update on how this has worked so far, please? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for the question. It's not easy to give an update on that, I have to say, because it's quite hard to monitor and it's quite a slow course of action. So what our providers, Your Health Oldham, do is tackle this on a number of fronts. So it's the actual Stop Smoking cessation service, which is quite hard to say when you're waiting for new teeth. But also education, enforcing legislation to try and dissuade children from buying cigarettes, and giving information out about the consequences of alternative methods. And obviously vaping falls into that, and we are very conscious that there's a very misunderstanding. So whilst vaping is very safe for people who are giving up tobacco smoking, it is not safe for people who do not smoke and should not start vaping. So that's a really important message that we're working on very hard. What I can tell you is that the rate of smoking in Oldham is slightly above the national average at about 19%. There's a recent report that says that this has dropped to 10% in Oldham, and I would say we do not believe that that's true. Those figures came out of a random survey of 600 people, and we're not entirely sure who they were or how it was connected for sort of community and cohort characteristics. So we are arguing about that. That figure could be used to determine our future grants going forward, which would be very serious in view of the fact that our smoking rates are high. So we are arguing, and we have had confirmation that a decision has not been made that survey will be determining our grant in the future so far, but we're fighting that. Thank you for the question.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask Councillor Brownridge for an update on social care, but I think she's covered it in previous questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burr.
Thank you. In your report, it mentions the Oldham Suicide Prevention Strategy. Had you, in your Cabinet post, thought about linking this with Anti-Bullying Week and with the Education Service? Because those three, they tie up together very importantly, and I think it could be something which we could think about for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The answer is no, I haven't specifically thought about that, but it sounds like a really sensible and practical solution, so I will certainly raise it with the office and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we don't have any more questions, we will move on to Humanities and Culture portfolio. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In moving the paper, I could just say a huge thank you, if I might, for the officers and partners of the NHS, the police, the voluntary sector and the third sector, who've come together tremendously to embrace the hubs that we've actually created and support the community councils. The other point that I'd like to make is the tremendous impact that the library service have had with the Summer Reading Challenge and Children's Literature Festivals, which actually attracted 8,000 children, which I think is a tremendous success, really, and I think that all the children will benefit going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. I got Councillor Marland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask the Cabinet Member to provide an update on the progress made on the tender on contract services for the Elderly Persons Luncheon Club, which is currently provided by Age UK, but which will be terminating in March of next year. The final deadline has been set for March, which is only nearly 4 or 5 months away, and the Council have confirmed that no further extensions will be given. However, since the Council's statement in early August, there's been no further update given to residents, luncheon club members or councillors. So will this vital service for the elderly of people of this town be closing due to the lack of swift action? As with only a few months until the deadline, the silence on this matter is very concerning. I would expect that at the very least by now the request for a tender submission should be with the potential providers. However, I was informed by the CEO of AGK last month that she has not received any communication from the council. If this luncheon club does not get renewed due to the lack of action by this council, then it will be to the detriment of hundreds of elderly and isolated residents in this borough. Their attendance at this weekly event is often the highlight of their week and gives the members of staff the opportunity to ensure these residents are safe, but it is also a vital way of identifying where additional support may be needed. Please can the Cabinet member give their absolute assurance that this contract negotiation is nearly resolved, or is it just another service that this council will allow to fall to the wayside and see our residents suffer? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm extremely sorry, but this isn't in my portfolio. This is in Barbara Roundage's portfolio under Health and Social Care, and I'm sure she will supply a written answer to you.
Is that okay, Councillor Moran? Thank you. If we keep our questions brief, more people will have opportunity to ask questions. Councillor Woodburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A year ago, plans were programmed to improve Saddleworth War Memorial ahead of its centenary in 2023. I commissioned this plan and funded it via my council budget. The strategy set out a package of works, including resetting stone slabs and repointing them, repairing mortar joints, reattaching the World War I plaques, and reconstructing the Ha Ha wall, amongst others. This year we celebrate the centenary of this heritage asset, yet none of these works have been completed as promised. Why?
Councillor Dean.
I'll certainly take the matter up, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think it's in my portfolio. But well, that certainly I'm very happy to take it up because it's a priority and has been a priority of the council to actually make sure that all the war memorials that we have in the town are actually fit and well, really that they're fit for purpose and really serve the purpose they should do. So we'll get onto it, you know, first thing tomorrow and see what we can do to make sure that work might be completed before Remembrance Sunday.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Peter, for your report. My question, Oldham's cultural offer is second to none, with the report outlining the amazing work that's been taking place across the borough. But can the Cabinet member explain why there's no mention of Oldham Coliseum in this report, beyond a brief reference to its materials being archived by the local studies and archives team? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for the question. As far as Oldham Coliseum goes, they've just recently appointed an executive director who is now working collaboratively with Oldham Theatre Workshop and on other projects on an ongoing nature. So the Coliseum will have an imprint on our future programmes of work in culture, and hopefully that will really boost the actual offer that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just an inquiry regarding a historic building in Shaw Town Centre, the Grade 2 listed site, St Paul's, which is part of our cultural heritage. It's been derelict for some time. Indeed, I believe at great cost it was pulled down. Could you give me an assurance, please, that the protection it has under its Grade 2 listed status will be enforced in any future development? Thank you.
I'll certainly try to provide an answer to the question. Obviously, I hadn't had any forewarning of that, and usually I believe that it would normally fall within the planning brief.
Thank you. So you end up time for this section. I got Finance and Corporation Resources Portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just briefly touch on some of the key points in my report and then obviously questions. So firstly, the accounts for 22-23 has been submitted within the deadline, and we were actually only a third of the local authority who did it. It's online, on course for it to be completed soon. There is some issues around RAC and the implication of it, and once that's resolved, I'm hopeful that it will be sorted. In terms of the revenue budget, we're projecting, Mr. Mayor, that this year there will be an adverse impact of around £10 million, and that's due to overspend in children's services as well as in temporary accommodation. You probably recall, Chair, that recently the LGA has estimated that the local government sector as a whole there's a shortfall of £4 billion. And clearly this overspend, if it happens and if it continues to the end of the year, then it will put pressure on us to resolve the budget for next financial year. In relation to revenue and benefits, I'm happy to report that our council tax collection and business rate collection rates are pretty good. So the council tax collection rate is 54.59, which is the third highest within GM family, and business rate is 56.39. In terms of technology, which was picked up by Councillor Sheldon before, so clearly this is a major issue, and you referenced Redcar in Cleveland, Manchester University, but also Camden had problems with their system, which has been breached and caused all kinds of difficulties. I can assure you, as a sector, local government sector, we have learned from that, including ourselves, and we have put in measures to complement the cyber defence. And as the leader was saying earlier, we'll give you a detailed response. But can I take this opportunity to reassure the Chamber that we're doing everything we can to protect our systems and make sure that our data is safe. In relation to Green New Deal, we're doing lots of work around that, and you'll be aware that we're doing a district heating, 10 megawatt district heating system within the town centre, and I'm hoping that when the final business case is done, we'll be able to move forward with that, and it will be great to have that heating system within the town centre supporting businesses and residential properties. And in relation to HR services, clearly there's issues in terms of recruitment which the local authority sector is experiencing. But I just want to make one announcement, Mr. Mayor, today, is that the employers and the employees have come to an agreement on pay awards for this financial year, which will be backdated from 1st of April. And the numbers are the £1,925 will be awarded to everyone below scale 43, and above that the increase will be 3.88%. So overall the percentage will be 7%, which is budgeted for. We are going to backdate that, and our intention is to make payment as soon as possible, for definitely for the December payment. I'm happy to take any questions, Mayor.
Councillor Craig.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. We've obviously got an item on the agenda tonight for the position of development role. But before we got to that position, we did have a role advertised for the Chief Executive. So how much does it cost taxpayers of this borough for this first recruitment process, given, of course, apparently nobody was good enough to apply?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the appointment of senior executives, senior members of the staffing team is really important, and we do everything we can to attract the best possible candidate for the job. I haven't got the figure to my hand in terms of how much it cost, but if is the question, was it right? Absolutely right, because we want the best possible person to lead our organization, especially at a time like this. So I think the approach that was taken by the council is absolutely correct. In terms of the actual number and the cost, I'm not able to do that, but I'm happy to supply that separately. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sir Al-Hamdani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's good to have you with us. Thank you. This is to do with the funding situation for the council. I'll try and keep it short. The council's reserves this year are expected to fall by about a third, from 87 million to 56 million. That would, on that path, that would leave us 2 years before we ran out of reserves. The largest item on capital spending is place and economic growth, which is 84 million out of 110 in the current year, 81 out of 108 million in the next financial year. You can see how large a proportion that is. Does the Cabinet member accept that if the financial path of the Council continued on its current route, it would then be unable to produce a balanced budget after those 2 years, and that would mean that the Council would have to consider issuing a Section 114 notice, which in effect is going bankrupt? Does the Cabinet member accept that the capital spending programme cannot be sustained and that spending plans must be changed over the next 2 years in order to avoid that situation? Thank you.
Mr. Jabbar.
No, thank you. Good question, but I think you got it slightly wrong. Not slightly wrong, massively wrong. Because this is a complex issue, and I'm happy to sit with you, with an officers to go through the details. But listen, there is no way that this council is going bankrupt in 2 years. So there are other authorities, even today. We've seen 1 in 10 districts are likely to be going bankrupt, but I'm happy to say we're not in that position. We manage our finance really well. So just let's look at the reserves. You're right to make the assumption, which is in the Treasury Management Report, but underneath that there's an explanation. So the reserves that you talk about is not all the reserve. There was some COVID money in there as well. Let me just give you the numbers. The reverse position, obviously, very important. So start of the year, we had £79.31 million reserves. On top of that, we had revenue grant reserves of £7.968 million. So at the end of the setting the budget for this year, we've actually used 11.577 million. So that meant that on the 1st of April this year, the reserves were down to 67.55 million. But we have in the past been able to replenish the reserves. Now, it is really challenging, I get this, now with the overspend in children's services and temporary accommodation. But the point is this, that we are doing everything we can to identify additional saving to balance the budget for next year. And those savings will mean that there will be minimal call on the reserves. So the work is underway to do that, and we do that every year. So I can give you that categorical assurance. The second point I wanted to make, so the third point I wanted to make is this, that look, there is a call for additional funding to be made available, and the government is looking at that. But that might come across to us at the autumn statement. It happened with the adult social care last year, but we're not relying on that. And in terms of your question around, just 1 second, please, just 1 sentence. In terms of the
1
capital,
second has passed.
What, figuratively 1 second. I'm trying. There's a report on page 181 as well. But just let me make just point about the capital program. Look, the MTFS, right, has fully taken into account all the capital expenditure, and it is reviewed every year. So all the issues that you're raising and the assumption that you're making is completely wrong. Everything in the capital program for the next 5 years, absolute true. I'm happy to sit with an officer with you to go through it.
I'm sorry, I will have to interrupt you. Please feel free to circulate the detailed answer as you articulated via email to all members so we sleep better. Thank you. That's not a joke, that's serious. I have Sorry, Councillor Islam, apologies, we are approaching the end of the section. Please feel free to email Councillor Jabbar. Notice of administration business, motion 1. Battling Oldham's housing crisis, Councillor Taylor to move and Councillor Goodwin to second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Housing is a basic human need, and our ambition for every Oldhamer to have a decent, affordable home should not be a big ask. However, there is a growing scarcity of genuinely affordable housing, and the fact of the matter is we simply haven't built enough social homes for way too many years. Under this government, the number of new social rented houses has fallen dramatically, meaning that there are now more than 30,000 fewer social rented homes built each year. In addition, many of these properties are also being sold off under the Right to Buy scheme, and for every 3 homes sold under this scheme, only 1 replacement home is being built, which is leading to a huge decrease in the amount of properties available and placing additional pressure on a system that is already at breaking point. This shortage has also contributed to the rocketing cost of private sector rents. Recent analysis shows that on average, private sector rents have risen by £168 in the last 2 years alone. And as we all know, Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget, which pushed up inflation and mortgage costs, means buying your own home has now also become impossible for many of our residents. The reality is there are already over 7,500 families on Oldham's social housing register, but in recent months, applications to join the register has gone through the roof, with almost 11,500 new applications. The figures are stark, and nationally, we are now in a situation where at the current rate housing is being built, it will take more than 120 years to give affordable homes to everybody waiting for social housing. That's 2 lifetimes. There is no doubt that the chronic shortage of social homes is at the heart of this housing crisis, because the bottom line is you cannot solve affordability without providing genuinely affordable homes. And genuinely affordable homes do so much more than simply change people's financial circumstances. They transform people's quality of life too. They can be a route out of cramped or poor housing conditions and prevent people from falling into avoidable crisis. But there are also economic benefits to affordable housing. Each development of 10 affordable homes can create up to 26 jobs, generating £250,000 for government and providing £1.4 million boost to help level up disadvantaged local economies. So it's not just people who can benefit from genuinely affordable homes, the economy does too. That's why it should be our national mission to give all people a good, secure home, but in order to do that, we need a fresh approach. What we must do is back first-time buyers and give priority to local people who want to stay in the local area. But with rental costs soaring and families facing arbitrary eviction every 15 minutes, it is vital that tenants are treated as a priority too, which is why we are calling on the government to implement the promised ban on Section 21 no-fault evictions to give private rented tenants the security that they so desperately need. This would also help to reduce the dramatic growth in the use of temporary accommodation. Here in Oldham, we currently have 470 households in temporary accommodation, but the latest figures for England show record numbers at a cost of £1.7 billion to the taxpayer. Unaffordable housing costs fuels homelessness and rough sleeping, so we need to build more social rented homes so that everybody has a good quality home that they can afford and that meets their needs. In the long term, building more social homes will act as an investment because it will reduce the housing benefit costs paid to private landlords. However, in the meantime, the local housing allowance freeze, which is pushing many tenants into dangerous, poor quality accommodation, must also be lifted. Because shortage is at the heart of this crisis, I welcome Labour's pledge to deliver the biggest boost to affordable housing for a generation. but this government must do more to tackle this housing crisis and help local authorities with the soaring costs of temporary accommodation bills. Thank you. I move.
Councillor Goodwin to second.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I rise to second this motion. And I'll keep it brief as I don't want to repeat what's already in the motion or what Councillor Taylor has already said, but the housing market is broken. With the recurring failure of government housing building targets and its refusal to build enough social homes, the dream of home ownership or affording rented accommodation is just that, a dream. I know of many young people in their late 20s or early 30s, and despite working full-time, they're unable to move out of the family home due to lower real-time wages and excessive housing costs. After 13 years of Tory government, what have we got? Increased homelessness, increased overcrowding, families living in homes deemed unfit for human habitation, a law they refuse to pass, all of which lead to an increase in mental and physical health problems, putting further strain on our underfunded NHS. And it doesn't have to be this way. Affordable homes could be built on a much larger scale. This would lead to economic benefits, which has already been alluded to, such as jobs and revenue for government and council, as well as the social benefits. So as the motion calls, let's demand for government end rough sleeping, ban no-fault evictions and ensure homes are affordable. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We have an amendment. I call on Councillor Arnott to move and Councillor Quigg to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll keep my comments as brief as possible as we have a very busy schedule this evening. There is no doubt there is a shortage of suitable and affordable housing in Oldham and across the UK. As elected members, I'm sure that every one of us in this chamber receives calls for help every week in our email inboxes. There are some points in this motion which I agree with and would support wholeheartedly. However, as predictably as night follows day, we are presented with a motion from the ruling authority which proposes virtually nothing tangible on a local level, short of holding a meeting with the stakeholders, which I assume refers to the forum the leader mentioned in our annual statement, which I would support and would be welcome. The remaining actions are to commit to something we are already committed to and write to the Secretary of State asking him to take far-reaching action. That's pretty much it. Of course, there is the inevitable attack on the government, supported by spurious statistics that this amendment seeks to challenge in detail, but little else. This amendment, while recognising some of the material points, expands the motion, amongst other things, urging the Council to commit to building on brownfield sites first, protect our green belt for future generations, support council and social tenants with the right to buy scheme, welcome the second phase of the Brownfield Land Release Fund, to support neighbourhood plans in Oldham, and to ask the Mayor of Greater Manchester to put his Places for Everyone plan to a Greater Manchester-wide referendum. This government has not got everything right on this matter, and neither have others before it, and neither has Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and neither has this council. But it's such a fundamentally important and challenging issue that it deserves serious and strategic approach. It should not be used as an opportunity to simply heap criticism on the national government. This amendment adds to the motion and adds some balance. I urge the Council to support it. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Quigg to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I won't expand too much on what Councillor Arnott's already said, but let's look at the facts, shall we? Because the amendment has had to state some of these facts. Between 1997 and 2010, the Labour government only built 2,920 council homes. That's completed homes. That's not things on paper that you can say, I've met my housing target. That's completed homes. Now, in the period between 2010 and today, the Conservative government and the coalition, over 21,780 council homes were built. Under the last Labour government, 247,000 social homes, housing associations, was built. 351,000 was built under the Conservatives. So to say that the government hasn't been building houses and housing associations haven't been building houses under this government is a complete and utter lie, because they have. The problem that you've got is supply chains. And supply chains are a knock-on effect. If builders haven't got materials to build and things become more expensive, developers just won't build. Councils can't build council houses. Developers build them. Builders build them. You can't force them to do something. It just doesn't work like that. We're not in communist China. We can't just force things on people when the facts are there that builders can't build. But the other thing is that for many people in Wrighton in particular, it's the fact that the green belt is a precious commodity. But listening here tonight, you think that there's a complete split between the Labour National Party and what's going on locally, because in one radio interview, the leader of the opposition, His Majesty's opposition, Keir Starmer, basically said, we're just going to ignore residents' concerns and build. Well, residents get very, very upset, as we found with the Places for Everyone plan. And I think it's important to try and bring people along with plans to build homes, because we do need homes, no matter what anyone says, we do need homes. But you can't ignore local people's concerns. And the fact that you're just prepared to just bulldoze through them, as with Places for Everyone, as with what the leader of His Majesty's opposition has already stated, I think is basically going to result in a quagmire of legal challenges and local opposition rising towards it. Instead of getting people to come along with you with these homes and building appropriate developments, i.e. on mainly brownfield sites, we're basically looking at Greenbelt because it's nice and easy for developers to make a quick buck. And I just think it's completely unacceptable for us to do that. If we bring people along with us, we'll get these homes built. If we don't, then we're going to be basically in this council chamber talking about this in 5, 10, 15 years' time. And I think it's appropriate to also mention, if I may, Mr Deputy Mayor, that the government has already given this council £3.151 million in order to build on brownfield sites. So let's get cracking. Let's get these sods of earth going. Let's build these homes that we need on these brownfield sites. You've got the brass. Let's build them. Because otherwise, again, as I said, we're going to be here again and again talking about this issue. And as Councillor Arnott's already alluded to, there's nothing in the motion, hence why the amendment, about actually doing something locally. It's just about letter writing to national government and then basically saying, well, look what we've done. We've written a letter, but it's all the government's fault. It's about getting local action in this area and doing something about it. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? I've had 2 members already indicate. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak against the amendment. I just think the Tories, unfortunately, are living in an unreal world. And why I say that is that people living in temporary accommodation has risen 89% since they came into office. And you look at Oldham in and before the both coalition government and subsequent Tory government, when we had a homeless problem, what we had was about referrals to hotels and temporary accommodations in single figures each year. What we've got now is, in Oldham, 473 people living in temporary accommodation in Oldham that's costing this council £1.7 million. And look at Wrighton. He said build on brownfield sites. There's 400 properties either just been built or in the process of being built in Wrighton on brownfield sites. None on greenfield or green belt sites. This council is meeting its housing obligations. We built 463 properties last year, which certainly met the government's targets and were actually above the government's targets. So what we are trying to say here is that this government's housing policy is beyond a disaster. 1.6 million houses are being lived in that are unfit and have got severe danger associated with them. We look at the private landlords bill that's been kicked down the lane time and time again. So people can be evicted with no cause. And we've been promised and promised by your government that this is going to be dealt with. Ever since it was in your election manifesto in 2019, nothing has happened. we don't receive any, very little support to build socially rented houses in this town when we desperately need them. And as Councillor Taylor pointed out, to resolve this problem at the current rate would take 120, 130 years. That's totally and utterly ridiculous. So we need initiative, and we've needed initiatives over the last few years to meet the needs of people both in Oldham and elsewhere in the country. So I ask members to vote against this amendment because I believe it's a complete nonsense.
Councillor Bashford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think among my colleagues, my views on the old GMSF and this new one are well known. But isn't it a fact that when Sajid Javid was the housing minister, what did he say to councils? He said, "We'll be breathing down your neck day and night if you don't meet our housing targets." He said, "Any NIMBY councils who don't build enough houses, I'll take away your planning powers." That's what he said, and that's still currently government policy. In order to meet those targets, local authorities have had to let loose land that they absolutely do not want to. And they've had to let it loose to meet those government targets, whether they're built on or not. And they have to allow private developers to pick and choose where they build the houses. So a private developer does not have to go to brownfield first. And why would they? Because they want to build the big houses with the big profits where people want to live, which is fine. People do want to live in a nice area. But that's not what we need at this point in time. We need houses that we, as local people, as councillors, we know where we want those houses. We know the type of houses we want. But we don't have the power to do it because the government won't let us do that. If the government will let us do that, we'd do it. So, first of all, our powers as a council to build houses are extremely limited. It's only private developers who build. They do it quite rightly for profit because that's what they do. But we need houses that people can afford. We need those houses where we want them to go. And we're not allowed to do that. And this is why we need action for the government to look at the policy, to give us those powers to direct the houses, the correct houses in the correct places that people can afford. If they can do that, we could start to spend that money that we've got or what we to make a big difference, to give proper houses to people who can afford to live there without upsetting people. But currently we can't. And we need to face up to that because that is the law of this land. And only the government can change it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hamdani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are some good points in the amendment with reference to, for example, wanting to build on brownfield first, wanting to protect greenbelt. Everyone wants to do those things. That's why we have a brownfield first policy in this council. And that's why I think people should really notice the 31 greenbelt sites that were, or sites which were to be allocated as greenbelt in places for everyone and no longer are. And I think people should respond on that. It's very important that they do. But I think there's a lot in the original motion and the amendment which becomes bickering when you're talking about whose fault is this rather than talking about how do we fix this. But we need to recognise that there are not enough social homes being built by anyone. And that comes from 1980. So that's a Conservative government, a Labour government, a coalition government, a Conservative government. Everyone has not done that. So let's stop trying to throw around blame, which is what is happening with this amendment and the original motion, and let's concentrate on the things that we can do. And I want to make a really important point. We get asked about affordable housing all the time, and people go, it's not really affordable. Can we just be absolutely clear? Affordable is a government definition which means 20% below the market rate in that area. What we actually care about is social housing. Social housing is the important thing because that is what is the term for houses that people can afford. We have built one social home for social rent in Oldham since 2015, and that is appalling. So can we just stop bickering and do things which fix things? Thank you.
Due to time constraints, I will have to move to right of reply. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to reply?
Please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, some interesting points there have been raised there. I mean, a little bit of a contradiction there, I think, Councillor Arnott. You know, you're talking about not playing the blame game, but I think your colleague, Councillor Quigg, didn't get the memo on that one from his speech. Look, you know, Councillor Quigg also talked about the supply chain, but the reality is that house building projects are still being delivered, you know, up and down the country, despite cuts in funding. And the right to buy scheme, which is ripping more social rented houses out of the system, you know, it means that everything that's happening, we are just not in a position to currently address this situation unless, as Councillor Sam Haldani said, we actually start building and we build more social rented properties. On a positive note, there is cross-party support in local government about the need for urgent ministerial action. And because the reality is many Tory-controlled councils, you know, are also reeling at the accelerating cost of this crisis. And I think that's why it probably is so disappointing, because we are in a housing crisis that, you know, we've just had conference season for the political parties. Yet in the Prime Minister's speech at the Conservative Party conference, there was only one reference to house building at the new Euston terminus of HS2. And the Housing Secretary literally mentioned it in the passing in a speech that lasted 13 minutes. So, you know, I think we're not seeing, and what we are not seeing from this government is the commitment that we need to make sure that people do have access to genuinely affordable housing. I mean, you know, I suppose the fact that you've had 15 housing ministers over the past 13 years probably does make it difficult for you to plan ahead. But our motion is quite clear. A lot of this is outside of our gift, but we do want the government to commit to its promises that it's already made. I don't think that's an unrealistic ask to write to them and remind them of that. And, you know, I am pleased to say that on the flip side, you know, at the Labour Party conference, housing and planning was at the forefront of all the main speeches because we recognise the central role that housing plays in providing a foundation for life. So we desperately need a housing recovery plan and a clear focus on renters, as well as the next generation of homeowners. In terms of some of the elements that you've added to the motion as part of the amendment, you've chosen to focus on things that are not directly relevant. You know, you're talking about supporting neighbourhood plans. We're already supporting Chadderton and Saddleworth with the neighbourhood plan. But absolutely, you know, if Councillor Arnott and Councillor Quigg want to go down that road for Royton, absolutely, you know, you should do that. The opportunity is there for you to do it, and I would encourage you to do so. Equally, supporting the government decision to remove mandatory housing targets, well, they just need to get on and do it, you know. You're saying to us, why are we writing to government? You're asking us to write to government again to remind them to do something that they said they're going to do. You know, it's not currently in the national policy framework, and therefore, you know, we can't base our planning on something that doesn't currently exist. So that is why we are supporting Places for Everyone, and the process for which has already been agreed with the Planning Inspectorate. I think the point has already been eloquently made that we do prioritise brownfield sites, and that is a key component of our regeneration plans. But again, you know, we obviously adhere to national planning legislation. Councillor Bashforth, you know, he's spoken previously at length, I know in planning, about his annoyance around how building companies get to cherry pick the best sites, and that is something that we would stop if we could. But I think a lot of what you have put into the amendment are just red herrings, and they're designed to detract from the importance and the key element of this motion. I wasn't going to say this, but I think, you know, I think given the question that I got earlier, you know, I do want to finish on the fact that I think you've included the best known Tory pledge, which is controlling our borders and stopping the boats. And I find it really sad that you would choose such divisive tactics to gloss over the real issues. And the real issues are we need more social housing. End of.
Does Councillor Arnott wish to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can probably tell by my Greek godlike glowing tan, I've just returned from holiday, and while I was there in the afternoon, while Councillor Adams lounged by the pool, as I did, wandered up and down the front. And in the shops that you always see abroad, there's a T-shirt which says, "It seems strange to be the same age as old people," and it struck me. I think that's pretty true, that. Then I look around the council chamber now, and I look at so many younger councillors in here, Councillor Charters, Councillor Sharp, and Lancaster, and Woodbine, and Councillor Shah, of course. It reminds me that lots of you will have never known this situation that I knew when I was growing up, and it was a much simpler world then, or at least it seemed it. But on the council housing front, basically what happened was that certain groups of people got jobs and they bought houses, and other groups of people, for whatever reason, decided they would stay in council houses, and council built houses for them. With the big houses with gardens and 4-bedroom houses, and they're really nice estates, and there was loads of them, and there was plenty for everyone. And it seemed probably like ambrosia. It probably seemed then, probably seems to me better than it actually was. However, that was the way of the world. But we really need to realise that, 40 years on, 50 years on now, we're in a very different place, and the world has changed. And councils don't build their own houses anymore. They don't collect their own rents anymore. A guy used to go round and knock on everybody's door. Not a bailiff or a debt collector, somebody who worked for the council. And he's going to collect the council rent money. And everybody was happy. It's gone. It's never coming back. It was 50 years ago. We are never having it again. And we need to realise we live in a different world. And things have happened over that period of time. And councils don't build houses anymore. And councils don't actually run social housing anymore. And we have, and I know Councillor Taylor is going to come back at me, but lots of things have happened. We have open borders. We have more people coming into our country. Now, there's no getting around the fact the vast majority of people who come into our country require housing. It's as simple as that. The majority of people who come into our country, by whatever route and for whatever reason, require housing. And we need much more housing, and we could never do it in the old way where councils built big houses for us with gardens. The whole thing is a dog's breakfast. Sam, you're absolutely right. Since 1980, governments of every colour have not built enough houses and not recognised that the requirement for them is totally different than it was 10 years ago and totally different than it was 20 years ago. And the next government, of whatever persuasion it will be, will need to take that challenge on. I'm not in the blame game here. We go through the same routine every 5 or 6 weeks or so. You guys put forward a motion which is all about central government and bashes the government, and we stand up and say, you've put through a motion which is all about government and bashes the government. We just go through the same thing time and time again. Whoever ends up in the government in 12 months, 16 months, 18 months' time, wherever it may be, has got a problem on their hands, and it's a problem that needs radical planning, out-of-the-box thinking.
Sorry, we're running out of time now.
And a vision. That's me done. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to vote. Those in favour of amendment? Those against? Abstentions?
Oh, come on.
Okay. Motion lost. Amendment lost. I will have to move. We don't have a time. I will have to move to the vote on the original motion. No, it's not amended. I can do that, Councillor Taylor, if you wish, but those in favour of the original motion? Those against? Abstentions? Motion carried. I'm really sorry we don't have a time to debate the second motion. Would you like to move and second it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did actually want to speak on this because it is an important issue and that's why it's back. But unfortunately,
So you do have 40 seconds.
I couldn't get it in 40 seconds, Mr Mayor, but it's an issue, it's a real issue, and it's another issue about permitted development, isn't it? We've got this and we've got the HMO. And again, I'm sorry, Dave, but the only people who can change that, the government, whoever's in there, Conservatives, Liberals, men from the moon, it's only the government that can change things like this, and yet we councillors get a lot of blame for this. We do our best to help people where we can, but our hands are tied a lot of the time by the legislation. So I hope people can support it, so I'll move it, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Councillor McLaren, do you want to formally second it?
Formally second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to move to votes. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion carried. Item 12, notice of opposition business.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Your favourite sentence, isn't it? And what is the point of order?
I think this is the right one, and I think you may approve of it, Mr Mayor. With the motions in front of us for opposition business, and with the amount of amendments, we're quite happy to withdraw our motion this evening, defer it to next month if that's okay, to give us more time to debate it, because I don't think we would get it through tonight anyway.
I've no objection. Second. If someone can second it and council agrees.
It's been seconded.
It's been seconded. Does council agree? Just to be clear, it does need to be resubmitted though. Thank you. Definitely I agree with this point of order. Motion 1, Councillor Waheed to move and Councillor Byrne to second motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move this motion. Mr Mayor, fellow councillors, I'm stood before you today proposing a motion to hold housing associations to account. This is not intended to be a witch hunt, but a stark reminder of this council's duty of care to the people of Oldham. We owe a profound duty of care to the people of this borough, as their welfare is at the heart of the mission. The commitment extends to holding housing associations accountable. By doing so, we safeguard not only individual rights, but also the collective integrity of our community. It's no surprise that people who we all class as vulnerable, or the most vulnerable in our society, are disproportionately tenants of housing associations. I'm sorry to say that these vulnerable people are being failed as we speak. We in this chamber are responsible for allowing these housing associations to fail their tenants. This was evident when the Secretary of State for Housing, Michael Gove, wrote letters to council leaders and social housing providers demanding that they improve conditions. This letter followed the dreadful events leading to the death of 2-year-old toddler Awab Ishak, who died in 2020 due to prolonged exposure to black mould. This black mould was found in Awab's parents' one-bedroom housing association flat. Mr Gove, in his letter, explained that there was a litany of failures by the housing association. He asked councils and housing associations to go further than the standard necessary to ensure that this doesn't ever happen again. The letter noted that all social housing providers should be undertaking assessments of damp and mould in their properties, including the prevalence of category 1 and 2 damp and mould hazards. Despite this tragic death, litany of failures and the subsequent laws passed, I put it to this chamber that we have still afforded a lot of trust in the same housing associations, asking them to carry out self-assessments and self-referrals and so forth. Unfortunately, damp and mould has not been eliminated from homes in Oldham. Far from it. We in these chambers need to be proactive. We must remain vigilant. The resulting and increasing scrutiny of the safety of our houses means that more and more families are going into temporary accommodations for prolonged periods. The length of time in temporary accommodation is compounded and exacerbated by the housing crisis. We must demand housing associations have clear instructions to ensure vulnerable people are identified from the outset and their accommodation be managed to ensure that the least possible disruption to their lives and health are caused, with particular care taken to well-being and safeguarding of all vulnerable people. We do not have the appetite for another tragedy such as our Bishak. We need to keep housing associations accountable for all aspects of housing, reminding them of the profound duty of care they owe to our community. We also need to address the issues of residents being uprooted from their communities due to lower priority in housing allocations. Local connections matter and need to be preserved. I support fully the proposal set out in the motion to alleviate this concern. And in addition to these crucial issues already discussed, I feel, being Remembrance Week, we must reaffirm our commitment to the men and women of His Majesty's Armed Forces. We are all, without exception, fortunate enough to live in a country protected by our professional armed forces. I'm confident you will all agree with me that the security and the peace of mind we all enjoy cannot be taken for granted. The men and women of the armed forces who sacrificed the prime years of their lives, risking life and limb for the tranquility we all enjoy, should not be taken for granted, ignored, or worse, mistreated. Clearly, the men and women of our armed forces deserve better. Each and every one of us benefit from their protection. So give them everything they ask for and more, I say. Treat them with dignity and treat them with respect.
You're out of time.
Gonna move, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to support this motion as we are all aware of the dreadful situation which happened in Rochdale and has already been referred to, and ended up in court for that authority. To put in place these procedures that are requested, contained in this motion, would seem to be common sense and, quite honestly, concern for us all. The government has launched a national advertising campaign informing social housing residents of their rights to report issues of concern, make complaints to their landlords and escalate them to the Housing Ombudsman if necessary. Making Things Right, that's what it's called, aims to improve the housing conditions and will run until the 3rd of March next year on social media and online, followed by further advertising in non-English languages. Being proactive in these situations that we all know about is easy to say, but that is what we in Oldham should aim for instead of being too late. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And apologies, I'm mindful of the time, hence I'm rushing. Councillor Wahid, congratulations on your maiden speech. If I'm right, that's probably your first speech, so well done. I got amendment is, sorry, I've lost the track. It's Councillor Taylor to move amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would also echo those sentiments and congratulate Councillor Wahid on his maiden speech. Job well done. I think what I would say in relation to this motion and our amendment is that, of course, we expect our registered housing partners should be held accountable for damp and mould in their properties. They do already have an obligation to ensure that their properties are safe and secure, as well as a duty of care to their most vulnerable tenants. And of course, we as a local authority will continue to work closely with all of our registered providers to ensure that they are meeting those obligations. However, we have had to amend the original motion because there are a number of elements within it that are either not within our gift or, well, not quite factually correct. So firstly, what I would say is that we do meet regularly with housing associations. We have a strategic housing board to discuss and address issues like damp and mould, and we have already established a single point of contact at each registered housing association, and we are working to agree a damp and mould protocol to make sure that our residents are safe and to make sure that we get the best for them, and that protocol will be discussed at the next strategic housing board. You know, nobody here is going to shy away from criticising our housing partners. If any residents are found to be living in damp, cold or unsafe properties, none of us wants to see a repeat of the terrible situation that happened in Rochdale. You know, we have to learn from what has happened and we have to do everything in our power to try and make sure that nothing like that can ever happen again. So we obviously, as I said, we do work very closely with our registered partners, but regardless of Mr Gove's letter, we can't simply compel housing associations to do things that sit outside of the legislation, which is why we work with them and why we obviously try and have joint arrangements to make sure that where they need support, we are there to support them. I would totally agree with the sentiments that was expressed around our armed forces. But what I would say is that I think it would have been useful if you had maybe had a look at the housing options form before obviously submitting your motion. You will see that if you go and have a look that it does ask the question about the armed forces and vulnerabilities, and discretionary powers are used all of the time by our homelessness team, and that's done so on a case-by-case basis. They are very aware that we have a moral obligation that goes beyond our statutory duties, and I think it's really commendable that we have a team that are not only willing but actually want to go above and beyond for residents during the most difficult time of their lives. You know, I do emphasise with residents who would like to stay in their local area, but again, we have to follow the national guidance, and our housing allocation system is based on providing accommodation to the bidder in the highest band for the longest time. So, because of some of those technical issues, obviously we've had to put in an amendment, but I hope you will support our amendment. Thank you.
We have only 5 minutes for motion altogether, Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you. I get the hint. I think it's a good motion to bring to the Council. Councillor Wahid, Councillor Byrne, thank you for that. I think the reason why, sorry, in terms of the substantial matter here, we agree with. I think it's a really important issue. What we can't do is landlords who get public funding run their housing in a way that people actually die from the condition in their housing. That's terrible. We completely accept that. And, you know, the tragedy happened across the road here in Rochdale. It's just absolutely dreadful. So we completely accept that. But I think, as Councillor Taylor said, you know, some of the things that you put in here is actually beyond our power, because housing associations are independent organisations. They have independent board. They're funded independent from the council. We work with them. We work with them on many occasions on a positive way. And I think what we try to do with this amendment, Mr. Mayor, is to use that positive working relationship to actually bring about change. So I think on that, we're totally with you. And I think the amendments that we made hopefully helps to deliver what you want to do, but in a professional way within the remit of the council. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I've got time for a brief speaker.
Okay.
Hamlet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My bit's the fact that I do support both parts of the motion. I was a tenant and still am tenant of First Choice Homes, which I said in my when I declared my interest, and also a tenant at a time of a flat that had damp and mould. So I have been through the mill, and I am now supporting residents in another housing association who I won't name, but they look after vulnerable residents who are not being as caring towards them. I think there needs to be more of a joint working group of sorts that needs to pull all the housing associations to come to heel on this, whether or not the council has power or otherwise. I think the motion is quite a good one. Yes, as already been said, armed forces communities are already prioritised. However, I think the housing associations need to be policed a lot better than they actually are. And I would support it in what's been said. I just think that people need to be looked after and treated better, and not like livestock.
Thank you. Councillor Wahid, do you wish to reply?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Jabbar. We seem to agree on quite a few things, but it was brought to my attention that, of course, as a council, this is not something new. It's something which has been brought to your attention some time ago. And in the past year or two, that I was surprised to hear that only one legal notice was submitted to a housing association. Now, in the 6 short months that I've been elected, I find that quite unbelievable that only one notice to a housing association has been presented. And I really question whether we are holding these housing associations accountable. Yes, we have to stay within the remit of what we can and cannot do, but accountability doesn't, we don't need too much to be holding people to account, you know. And, you know, with these temporary accommodations that, you know, seem to be the new norm, I've, with my own eyes, witnessed how our residents have been let down, you know, and it doesn't often take a lot of big budgets. It just takes a bit of empathy, you know, to make sure that we highlight who's the vulnerable ones in our society, and, you know, just adapt our plan of, you know, how we're going to treat them. It doesn't take budgets, and it doesn't always take legislation to be able to do that. And in amongst, you know, these amendments, to be honest, I would ask that you vote for the original motion rather than the amendments made. And that's all. Thank you, sir.
So we're really out of time now. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to reply? Councillor Taylor, do you wish to reply? We got 1 minute altogether.
Thank you. Look, I'll keep it brief. Like you say, I think we agree on the majority of what is in the original motion. I think we've already outlined the reasons why we have put forward an amendment. In terms of some of the detail about the legal notice, I will actually go and take that back to the housing officers. And like I say, a lot of this work we do through the Strategic Housing Board, so that certainly is something that we can discuss. It's a valid point to raise, and we always take on board anything that is raised in this chamber, so thank you for raising that. But yes.
Right, we're moving to vote.
Yes, so, but we did wonder if you were sat on the right side of the chamber with what you were saying there, so good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of poaching attempts going on here. Those in favour of amendment, raise your hands. In favour, okay. Okay, abstentions? Okay, amendment is carried. I'm sorry I don't have time to debate on original motion again, so we're gonna move to vote. So vote on motion as amended. Against? Any abstentions? Take the liberty of making a point, which is very valid point, around serving the legal notice. How comes that only one legal notice has been served? I think we all come here with intention to serve our residents, and I'm pretty sure Councillor Taylor will pick it up, and maybe we'll get some feedback as a council. Thank you. We have 10 minutes for the motion 2. Fair deal for private renters. I call on Councillor Harkness to move and Councillor Sykes to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So we now come to a motion about the last part, I suppose, of housing, which we haven't discussed tonight, which is around the private rented sector. So this motion is a follow-up on so the Liberal Democrats' backing of the leading charities in calling a private rented emergency in Greater Manchester. So there's a huge problem in the rented accommodation sector. A lack of social housing means that many are having to look for private rented accommodation. Getting accepted for private renting is a huge problem and is causing homelessness. Some landlords are not wanting to accept people on benefits, in part because the housing benefits goes nowhere near the amount needed for the rent. Some landlords are not even accepting families with children now. So some landlords are responsible, but the private rented sector is becoming like the Wild West. The number of private renters in the borough is increasing as less people can afford to get on the property ladder. The price of renting is also increasing and becoming increasingly unaffordable. I know of residents who have had 3 rent rises in the last 6 months. This comes at the same time as many private renters are struggling with the cost of living crisis. Years of pay freezes, of below inflation pay rises, the impact of COVID-19, soaring energy prices, stagnating wages, rising inflation and unfair tax rises, all with little or no support from the government. There are issues with poorer quality living accommodation and challenging this is sometimes resulting in unfair evictions. I wrote in support of one of my vulnerable students at school to be rehoused recently, and this came from an unfair eviction. And the options available were very limited, and this may be having to move over 60 miles away. So the private rented sector is like the Wild West. There's not enough regulation to crack down on cowboy landlords, and this does not reward responsible landlords either. We need to get tougher on rogue landlords by issuing and enforcing improvement notices where conditions are unacceptable. This includes issues with access code as well as damp and mould. The government pledged in 2019 that they would bring legislation on evictions. So it's sad that recently the Conservative Minister Michael Gove has kicked a long-promised ban on Section 21 eviction notices back again. This is no-fault evictions. The new laws would give renters the right to request pets and to help them with report dodgy landlords more easily. But the Levering Up Minister says no. Another pledge broken. So we propose that Oldham Council increases their enforcement by serving improvement notices on the average of 12.5% of private homes with hazards, serve notices of those failing to meet energy standards, enforcing letting bans, and work with the police to protect from illegal evictions and help residents get rent and deposits back when they are entitled to do so. We should join with campaigners such as Generation Rent for a register of landlords, but use the various databases we have already to identify the private rented homes so that the council can communicate with private renters more easily. Council should increase the amount of information and advice on the council website to assist with these difficulties. Please support the motion.
Mr. Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry. I've done very well all night not to say it, so I thought it'd be a shame not to at the end.
Only because
Mr.
you
Mayor
did not
knows
speak
I'm only
much.
joking, and I'm sure he's counting up on the bill. I rise to second this, and sadly for the first time the leading cause of homelessness in Greater Manchester is the ending of a private rented tenancy. That hasn't been the case previously. Rents are rising faster than wages, and the average private rent rose by almost 13% in Oldham in the last year alone. The private rented sector remains the least regulated and increasingly the most unsafe corner of the housing market. What people living in private rents desperately need is security. People deserve protection against rogue landlords, particularly when those landlords are doing little or nothing to tackle unacceptable living conditions. We've all seen the devastating headlines over the last few years, the human cost of poor quality housing, the impact of damp and mould, substandard insulation and excessive cold. No child, in fact no one, should ever have to grow up in an unsafe home. We want all our residents to receive support, and we need to challenge rogue landlords. Responsible landlords also want rogues dealing with, as it impacts on who are responsible. Simply, Mr. Mayor, we want Oldham to be a proactive council where residents and landlords alike know that the council will step in when conditions aren't good enough. The government has dragged its heels for months over the Renters Reform Bill, and only this month backbench Conservative MPs said it was unconservative to try and reform the private rented sector. So, if we're going to wait around for Westminster to step in, we're going to be waiting for a very, very long time. Instead, let's look at what we can do for our own residents, more and more of whom are being forced into the private rented sector and not doing that by choice. Pass the motion tonight. Let's work together for a safer and more secure future and for those who rely on private rentals. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Due to the time constraint, I don't have time for debate, so we can formally move amendment second and have a vote on it. Councillor Quigg?
If you wish to, Mr. Mayor, given the time. I was going to speak, but I won't.
You can speak for 15 seconds. If you can try. If you can try.
Oh, happy days. It keep you all happy, won't it?
See, you can
I'm quite
speak for
shocked, though.
15
It's only a brief amendment to the Lib Dem motion, but I am quite shocked that the Liberal Democrats wish to allow landlords to not enforce the law of the land in terms of illegal immigrants possibly renting accommodation, because it's every man's duty in this chamber and every man's duty out there to report those who are here illegally, because it puts pressure on everyone else who wants to get a house, who's here legitimately, and local people in particular get very annoyed when they think people who are in this country here illegally are getting houses. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arnott.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're going to move to vote. All those in favour of amendment? You do have right of reply.
Yes, so very quickly. So on immigration, so the problem is the Conservative government aren't processing applications fast enough. They're not dealing with the situation. We've got the worst immigration processing in Europe. So we shouldn't be putting vulnerable people on the streets due to incompetence. All that's going to do is make people lie or...
Keep going.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be doing that, you know. So I think that's probably all I've got to say so far on this bit of the on this amendment around this xenophobia, which again we're seeing from the Conservatives.
Councillor Craig, do you want to use your right of reply?
Oh, well, there we go. We've got out the is closet. It's this, and this. Well, it's not. If someone's here illegally, they're here illegally. That's called breaking the law.
Illegally, because you're not
please don't talk over.
You don't want landlords to check the status of their immigration. So no wonder you don't know if you don't check. I mean, that's a basic thing. We've got... Well, we're asking everyone to do it. You don't want them to do it. So, well done. Mr. Mayor, given that, I'll retire.
Thank you. So all those in favour of the amendment? Against? Any abstention? Amendment lost. I'm going to move to the second amendment. Councillor Taylor to move and Councillor Charter to second. Councillor Taylor, 2 minutes max. Sorry, altogether 2 minutes left.
I'll keep it much briefer than that. So, essentially, yes, I'm standing up to move this amendment. What I would say is that we do agree with the broad principles of this motion, and I am supportive of the Councillor Hartness and Councillor Sykes' comments in terms of moving their motion. I think that our amendment actually seeks to build on what the Liberal Democrat group have proposed here, and actually a lot of this is already Labour Party policy, so of course we would support that. However, some of the asks regarding data is not something that we can commit to, unfortunately, because some of the information requested would be covered by GDPR, and we don't have the right to obtain data from outside agencies such as tenancy deposit schemes. Nonetheless, we are currently implementing a new IT system across the council, which will support officers in analysing trends to help inform policy decision making, which also covers off a number of asks in the original motion. I was going to finish by recognising how important resident engagement is, and we will continue to use all tools at our disposal to engage with private renters. We are, after all, a resident-focused council, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Doorstep Engagement team for all the amazing work that they do to support our residents. But, you know, seeing as there is a theme this evening, I just want to say that, you know, you won't get any dog whistle politics from our side of the chamber, and hopefully this is something that won't be repeated at future council meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Charter to second.
Formally second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Harkness, do you wish to use your right of reply?
Yeah, just very quickly. There's some reasonable things in this amendment, but there's one thing in here where it says, and I've heard a couple of times tonight, support the plans of the next Labour government. Now, there's a couple of times where it's been mentioned, this next Labour government are going to do this. It's coming out because it's a bit arrogant now. We haven't had a general election. We don't know who's going to be the next government. So shall we just let that happen when the elections go on and let the public decide who the next government's going to be, and stop sort of assuming that the Labour Party are going to be running the country in the next election?
Councillor Taylor, do you want to use your right of reply? Okay. Okay, all those in the favor of amendment? Okay, all those against? Any abstentions? So amendment carried. So I will have to move to the vote on a motion as amended. So do you want to use your right of reply? Thank you. All those against? Any abstention? A motion carried as amended motion. We have 4 minutes for motion 3. Councillor Hinds to move and Councillor Sykes to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, with the time constraints, which we were advised on, was exactly why I focused my leader's question on this subject. But I am thankful to Councillor Oldham for removing his motion to give us at least a brief few words on it. I'd like to thank, this is a cross-party thing, so I'd like to thank the Conservatives for amending the motion so it goes to a wider audience, because originally this came through the Shaw and Crompton Parish Council. And I'm also thankful for Councillor Sykes, who seconds the motion, although I am a bit confused why he's then decided to amend it. This is quite frankly something that is within the power of Oldham Council, and it's been implemented successfully in other Labour-controlled authorities. But it's not a question of NIMBYism. It's not a question of not understanding the need for valid HMOs. We're simply putting this motion forward to give residents a voice and confidence that due process is going on in things that can have a significant impact in your area. And I thank Councillor Shah for her comments before, but it rather sounded like lip service to me. And I'm also aware that there are a number of developers active in the borough who see this as easy pickings. So I would like to say this is a moral thing, it's not a party thing. Everyone in this chamber has wards who, irrespective of which party they are, who have this problem. And I think every person in here who represents the people in them wards has a duty of care and a moral obligation to ensure residents are included and listened to where possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hinds, for keeping it brief. Councillor Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's down as seconding this motion. It would have been nice to have been officially asked or even consulted, as the wording has changed on a number of occasions since originally submitted. Councillor Hinds has said...
You can withdraw from second.
Councillor Hinds has said he will not work with democratically elected Liberal Democrats. His words have been actioned, as we know, by kicking us off parish council committees. However, we'll work with anyone if it is for the benefit of residents that we represent. So I'll leave my name on the motion, as HMOs are a key issue for us in our part of the world and for everyone else in this borough, and I'd urge council to vote for the motion, and I also am quite happy to accept the Conservative amendment that strengthens the motion, and there's no intention that it doesn't apply elsewhere, and that's very welcome, and I'm quite prepared to accept that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're going to move to amendment, but we don't have time to speak.
I'll move the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
We don't have a time for the right of reply. I think we heard enough. Is that okay, Councillor Hinds? Yeah? Okay. Does Council agree with the amendment? All those in favour?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to make it clear for everybody, is this the Conservative amendment that I've just proposed, correct? Okay.
All those against? Amendment lost. I will have to move to the second amendment. Afraid we don't have time to debate it. Councillor Sykes?
I don't even get 15 seconds.
Well, try 15 seconds. I'm going to count
Something I've never done before in 30-odd years in this chamber, which is moving the amendment to your own motion, that might tell you what I was talking about at the start is the truth. Our amendment strengthens the motion because part of this is about licensing as much as it is about planning. Therefore, it strengthens it, so I'd urge you to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamdani?
Second.
Thank you much. Councillor Hinds, do you want to use your right to reply?
No, that's fine. I'd like to go to the vote.
I'm assuming Councillor Sykes is happy as well. Thank you. Does Council agree the amendment? Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Amendment lost. Sorry, Amendment 3. We'll have to literally move and second. Councillor Brownich.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Shutt.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hinds, do you wish to use your right of reply?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Does Council agree the substantive motion? Sorry. Yeah. Everyone woke up now. Yes. Does Council agree with the amendment? All those in favour? Against? Any abstentions? Okay. Amendment carried. Okay. Now we're voting on motion as amended. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Motion carried as amended motion. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hoban, again for postponing your motion 4. Item 13. May I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Shah to second the report, Treasury Management Report.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Is the report agreed? Okay. Does any member wish to speak? It's the other way around, but no? Take it as no. Annual report of Audit Committee. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Shah to second the report.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree the report? Thank you. Item 15, amendments to terms of reference of Audit Committee. I call on Councillor Jabbar to move and Councillor Shah to second the report.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Does any member wish to speak? Does Council agree the recommendation? Thank you. Item 16, update on actions from Council. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Sheldon to second the report.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor. Does any member wish to speak? Does Council note the report? Item 17, appointment of Chief Executive and Head of Paid Services. I call on Councillor Shah to move and Councillor Al-Hamdani to second the report.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Second, Mr Mayor. Reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Does any member wish to speak?
Well, I'll yield to Sam if he wishes to speak first.
Councillor Craig?
Yes, Mr Mayor. We've just very briefly, we did have a briefing from the Chief Executive on Monday, and I've got some grave concerns about some of the language that was used in that meeting, which I've addressed with the Borough Solicitor outside of that. However, I'm still not satisfied with what was said to me and the way that the process was run. And unfortunately, I find myself in this position where I have got serious doubts about what's happened in terms of item 17. And as a result, I will request a recorded vote on this item.
Thank you. Councillor Hamdani, did you want to say anything?
Sorry, is there... And there's still part of the process to go, I think.
Do I have any support for the recorded vote? 5, 6, yep. Does Council agree the recommendation? So we'll have a recorded vote on that.
Councillors, please indicate clearly whether you're for, against or abstain as I go through the list of names.
Point of order, please, Harry. What we voted on here, because I'm not aware of really what...
So item 17 on your book is appointment of Chief Executive and Head of Paid Services report.
So it's... But I don't understand his objection. Why is he voting against it? Are you voting against it?
We will find out when he votes whether he votes against it or in favour. Sorry, I can't read his mind. Apologies. I suggest we move to the vote.
So it's been agreed that we'll have a recorded vote. Okay, I'll begin with Councillor Adams Christine.
Against.
Councillor Akhtar Shoab. Councillor Al Hamdani Sam.
For.
Councillor Ali Mohan.
For.
Councillor Arnott Dave.
Against.
Councillor Ball Sandra. Councillor Bashforth Marie.
For.
Councillor Bashforth Stephen. Councillor Bishop Helen.
For.
Councillor Brownridge Barbara. Councillor Byrne Pam. Councillor Jarters.
For.
Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Davis. Councillor Dean. Councillor Fryer. Councillor Gaffur.
Against.
Councillor Gloucester.
For.
Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Hamlet.
I think we can do better, but for.
Councillor Harkness.
For.
Councillor Harrison. Holly. Councillor Harrison Jennifer. Councillor Hintz.
Against.
Councillor Hindle.
Against.
Councillor Hobin.
Against.
Councillor Hurley.
Against.
Councillor Hussain. Aftab, sorry. Councillor Hussain Feeder. Councillor Hussain Junaid. Councillor Hussain Sajid. Councillor Iqbal. Councillor Irfan. Councillor Islam.
For.
Councillor Jabbar. Councillor Lancaster. Councillor Malik. Councillor Marland. Councillor McLaren. Councillor Moores. For. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Mushtaq. Councillor Nasheen. Councillor Quigg.
Against.
Councillor Ria.
Against.
Councillor Salamat. Councillor Shah.
Proudly for.
Councillor Sharp.
Against.
Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Surjan. Councillor Sykes. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Wahid. Councillor Woodvine.
For.
Councillor Shohan.
For. Okay, recommendation is been agreed. Before I finish the meeting, I would ask you to join me on Remembrance Sunday in Oldham Town Centre. Please remember and honour those who have given their present and future for our future. And I hope to see you all on Sunday. Thank you very much.